What? What? Are you saying you're not going to participate in the trial? Only punishment awaits such blasphemy. What punishment? Oh yeah, that's cool. I don't know, throw you in a deep, dark, scary prison or something. Different. The strange feeling he felt was now directed at Monokuma. A prison? No, they aren't that kind. A series of images flashed in Makoto's mind, and at first he thought it was some kind of parade. But he quickly realized that was a mistake. What looked like lights were actually buildings engulfed in flames. The red decorating the scene seemed to have come from human bodies. Despair. It wasn't confined to the academy or even to Japan. Images of worldwide death and destruction flooded Makoto's brain with every throb of his headache. I've seen this before. Besides the indescribable violence taking place in all these images, there was one thing they had in common. Who are they? They're rampaging terrorists wearing black and white masks were wreaking havoc in these images. They took everything: money, valuables, lives, families, dignity, the past, the future, and possibly even hope. The masks these terrorists were wearing perfectly resembled the face of the stuffed animal arguing with the students before him. Shut the hell up. Say whatever you want. I'm not going to be a part of this. Don't be so selfish. You're the one being selfish. Kill whoever you want. It's got nothing to do with me. The evil standing here before me. I'm trembling with fear. But I won't give in to such evil. It's my style to stick it out and resist till the very end. If you really want to get out of here, you'll have to go through me first. Monokuma swung his arms wildly as he charged at the girl with waddling steps. Pink, yeah. But the girl stomped on the self-proclaimed headmaster of the academy with ease. Are you enjoying yourself now? Pinned beneath the girl's foot, Monokuma looked up into the girl's cold eyes and calmly asked, Are you? Huh? Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is not allowed. You violated a school regulation. At that moment, a chill ran down Makoto's spine. She's going to get killed. Monokuma's words sounded very threatening to him. It wasn't a prediction or a guess. It was as if he knew the danger Monokuma posed from the start. If this continues, Jinko's gonna... Yeah, purple. His mind still didn't fully grasp the situation unfolding in front of him. By the time he realized he was about to remember something, he was already running forward. Junko. The impact of his feet combined with the rhythm of his headache, sending his brain and heart into a panic. Green. No, she's different. She's... I invoked the mighty summon spell. Help to me, Holy Spirit Gunnar. Monokuma wiggled beneath the girl's foot and let out a scream. Ooh. At that exact moment, Monokuma charged at her and screamed out, Kuro, watch out! Huh? Yes, blue. Blue. The girl, just as Junko, widened her eyes in shock. As if to evade the charging Makoto, she jumped back with agility unheard of in a teenage high school schools. Orange. But then, right at that moment, countless spears pierced the spot where she had been standing just a split second ago. All the students, including the girl, stared wide-eyed at this sudden turn of events. Spears, too many of them to count, had shot out with blinding speed from mechanisms installed in the floor and walls of the gym. However, Makoto was unable to notice this. Huh? Why did I call Junko Makuro? Makuro? As that thought entered his mind, a sharp sudden impact struck his side. Yeah, followed by an intense, deathly pain that ran down his spine and spread throughout his entire body. Green. The spear stabbed into his side, instantly tore his flesh to shreds and shot out his back, coated in blood and other bodily fluids. At that moment, the black fog that had engulfed Makoto's mind was consumed by death itself. Orange. And as his consciousness slowly faded, he remembered everything. Because of the electric jolt and the chemical compound from the escape button, because of that button that he had found by chance, Makoto Naegi managed to escape. He escaped this hopeless game where he and his fellow students had their memories stolen and were forced to kill each other. Of course, that escape is also what led him to his current life-or-death predicament. In the end, perhaps he only escaped from one despair to fall into another. But at the same time, his actions had unintended consequences for one person. A girl having a false identity as her beloved little sister, Junko Inoshima. Makuro Ikusaba, the ultimate soldier, a member of the ultimate despair. Ooh. Her past, her future, perhaps even her hope itself, are on the path to despair. Oh. And so the curtain falls on Makoto's story for now. From this point, the story is about a certain girl. A girl who's more pitiful than anyone else in the sealed-off academy. A new curtain, along with new despair, shall now rise. Oh, okay. Aww. Time had certainly stopped for Makuro Ikusaba. It was as if everything around her had frozen perfectly still. In the past, she was known as the ultimate soldier. She had experienced this feeling before, during her time with the mercenary group Fenrir. In situations where she was surrounded by a hopeless number of enemies within the jungle or in a desert ruin. The charging enemies seemed as though they were frozen in time, which allowed her to claim a decisive victory in all her battles. But this wasn't a battlefield, so why did this familiar sensation activate once again? In order to understand what had happened, Makuro slowly tried to assess the current situation from within this frozen world. Junko and Makuro are both children of despair, but Junko Inoshima, the true ultimate despair, harbors a far deeper darkness within her. Though their last names are different, Makuro is Junko's older sister, connected by the bonds of blood. She cooperated with Junko's hopeless plan and impersonated her under the pretense of participating in the killing game along with her classmates. According to the plan, Makuro was supposed to oppose Monokuma, who her sister was controlling, and be locked in a dungeon as punishment. Isolated from the others, she would then escape the dungeon and perform various acts intended to deprive the students of hope. That was the role she had been assigned. When Makoto succumbed to his headache, Junko ordered her to see if the shock had caused him to remember anything that could make him a liability. He woke up as she was tending to him, so she made small talk with him, but she didn't notice any change in his behavior. Until this point, she was certain that there shouldn't be any problems. Nothing could possibly go wrong. She stomped on Monokuma like her sister ordered her to do, and flawlessly spoke the lines she was taught to memorize. Afterward, she would fall through a trapdoor into the dungeon and remain isolated from the other students. That was her role. She hadn't done anything wrong. There were no problems. There were no problems. She repeated that to herself over and over like a silent prayer. But in that frozen moment in time, what she saw was not a trapdoor, but countless spears. One of them had skewered Makoto through his side. Why? Makoto? Why are there spears? Gunnar. I would have died if I had moved. Did Junko mess up the plan? No, Junko would never mess up. Was she trying to kill me? Me? Makoto saved me. Why? Why did he say my name? Did his memories come back? Did I not realize that? Did I make a mistake? Is that why Junko got angry? Is this punishment? Is it my fault? Junko tried to kill me? Kill me? Kill me? Kill me. Slowly, time came back to her world. Makuro could feel her face turning pale as she slowly looked towards Makoto. The students' screams rang throughout the gym. Sayaka was probably the first one to scream. But who screamed first didn't matter to Makuro. Makoto, why? Makoto's the ultimate lucky student. He had been her classmate for the past 2 years, and now he was a sacrifice to despair. Not long ago, he had given her an answer of sorts during their conversation in the nurse's office. He was just a pawn in the plan her sister had devised. But now, a feeling of doubt began forming in Makuro's mind. What did I want from Makoto? As her heart churned restlessly, she continued to think. In return, I promise that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you. Was I impersonating Junko there? Or did I really mean that? When did I start feeling this doubt? Just now? The moment he saved me? Or when we spoke in the nurse's office earlier? Or when I first confronted him about this killing game before his memories returned? Or was it before even that? Makuro stood there, confused and overwhelmed, as Makoto slowly opened his eyes, the spear still impaling him through the side. Makoto, are you okay? Makuro was no longer impersonating the ultimate fashionista. Looking up from the floor of the gym, Makoto asked, "Why are you dressed up like Junko?" He was smiling. Maybe he couldn't feel the pain anymore, or maybe he was being affected by something else. But regardless, Makoto ignored the fact that he was dying just to give Makuro his warm smile. I'm glad you're safe, Makuro." As soon as she heard Makoto's weak, fading voice, something inside Makuro snapped. From within the shell of despair she had built up, an intense emotion began flowing out. No, this is all wrong. She couldn't hold back that emotion any longer. No. And for the first time in her entire life, Makuro unleashed a scream into the world. See, I don't get what this is for. Do I have to switch? As Makuro fell to her knees and clutched her head, a small shadow started walking toward her back. The stuffed animal that had been under her foot, Monokuma. His claws were extended, and he was no longer walking with his usual waddle. Instead, he moved like a beast silently stalking its prey as he slowly advanced within the target's blind spots. As he inched closer to Makuro, Monokuma raised his razor-sharp claws, crouched on his haunches, and suddenly leapt toward the back of her neck. However, just before those claws could reach the paralyzed Makuro, a dark shadow moved in front of the side and swatted those claws away with one blow. His lunge deflected, Monokuma was sent flying through the air, spinning wildly before crashing into the wall. Damn you, what are you trying to do? Sakura Agami, the ultimate martial artist, had just been another tragedy. She stood before Monokuma and addressed him in a loud, booming voice. Not only did you attempt to kill Junko for violating school regulations, you even attacked Makoto, who had nothing to do with this. If you plan to continue acting in such savage manner, there is no reason for us to play along with your game. Byakuya Tagami, the ultimate affluent progeny, smirked condescendingly at Sakura. Fool! One could say you've now violated school regulations with your senseless actions. He looked as if he honestly did not care if his fellow students lived or died at all. Well, she nearly deflected the headmaster's attack just now, so I do not think it truly counts as an act of violence. Like Byakuya, Celeste seemed unfazed as she chided him over his words. However, the banter between the two was enough to stir the stunned students to action. Makoto! Sayaka was the first to run towards Makoto, who lay bleeding from his stomach. But Monokuma stopped her, shouting in a tone of voice that seemed completely out of character. Be careful, don't get too close to those two! Huh? Startled by Monokuma's desperate tone, Sayaka and the others stopped moving almost instinctively. The students looked around at each other. Instead of his usual playful gait, Monokuma walked towards them with deliberate, methodical steps. And then he suddenly blurted out something that took everyone, including Makuro Ikusabi, by surprise. I'm sure you're probably confused about the sudden turn of events, but I want you guys to work together. As Makuro slowly turned her head toward Monokuma, he pointed at her and yelled, Makuro Ikusabi, Saba, and her accomplice, Megito Naegi, are the terrorists responsible for locking you all inside the academy. Once again, time stopped for Makuro. But this time, she wasn't the only one affected. Everyone seemed to be frozen in shock. After a few seconds of silence, Ayo Ashihina, the ultimate swimmer pro, spoke first. Huh? You're kidding, right? I mean, Makoto is a terrorist? That's impossible! And who's Makuro anyway? I mean, that's Junko. Monokuma began slowly explaining to Ayo. The real Junko must be imprisoned somewhere in the school. Worst case scenario, she might be killed. Makuro must have researched which one of you would be easiest for her to impersonate and hid among you all by pretending to be her. She's probably going to make sure the killing game went smoothly. Suddenly, Monokuma's hand and feet began jerking in an awkward motion as he looked at the other students and introduced himself. I'm Bashiki Madara, the ultimate hacker. I'm your upperclassman. I hacked into the academy from the outside, and I was able to take control of Monokuma's body just a little while ago. Take control from who? Oh, hold on, guys. I'll be back in a second. Take control from who? From the head of the terrorist organization that's controlling this robot from the outside. What? What are you saying, Junko? Makuro trembled as she heard the words coming out of Monokuma's mouth. For a brief moment, she clung to the hope that her sister wasn't trying to kill her. But as soon as that hope was born, it was immediately consumed by despair. Junko had the power to transform hope into despair. She would never let anyone hack her that easily. There's only one explanation. Junko Enoshima was pretending to be someone named Bishiki in order to frame Makuro and Makoto. It was as though Junko was using Makuro's survival as a branching path to lead the students to a different despair. Monokuma continued talking, telling the students more lies designed to prod them to action. On your first day at Hope's Peak Academy, you guys were exposed to sleeping gas, knocked unconscious, and taken hostage. Makuro and Makoto are probably the one operatives. Oh. Makuro and Makoto are probably the only operatives that the terrorists sent inside the school. That means they probably know how to escape from here. And then Monokuma turned to face Makuro. Makuro Ikosabi was a member of a mercenary group called Fenrir. She's a wanted criminal who's killed over 10 people associated with the school. So don't get soft and think you can capture her alive. In fact, that's exactly what the cops told me. So the moment I saw an opening, I tried hacking the trap they set and tried to kill her. But what about Makoto? Monokuma gave a cold, emotional answer to Sayaka's question. My guess is that a measly little ultimate lucky student didn't stand a chance of defying a group like Fenrir. He was probably threatened and forced to cooperate before you entered the school. Or judging from his earlier actions, maybe Makura seduced him. Sayaka's face went pale when she heard that answer. She immediately stopped talking. Ooh. Makura raised her head and shouted, "You're wrong, Makoto isn't a terrorist. You all have to believe me." The whole gym fell silent. And then, as if he was speaking for everyone there, Taka stepped forward and nervously asked, hold on, what do you mean, Makoto isn't a terrorist? It sounds like you're saying that there's no doubt that you, in fact, are a terrorist. I ask that you correct yourself at once and say we are not terrorists. Celeste began expressing her own doubts as well. It is strange. Does it not seem odd that she is so protective of someone we all just met a few days ago? Makura stared in silence. The other students' faces began to fill with suspicion and doubt as they realized they weren't looking at the real Junko. Byakuya pushed up his glasses and began coldly pointing out what seemed out of place to him. I heard that fool Makoto, or whatever his name is, call you Makuro instead of Junko. How would Makoto know that your name is really Makuro if he just met you not that long ago? That's... I've also heard of Fenrir, continued Byakuya. As I recall, its members have a tattoo somewhere on their body. Instinctively, Byakuya's words put Makuro into a calm state of mind. In hostile situations, her defensive reflexes as the ultimate soldier often manifested themselves. Makuro's tattoo was on the back of her right hand. She wondered how she could hide this from the other students without also calling attention to it. But in the end, this concern was in vain. If the police's records are true, she should have a tattoo on the back of her right hand. Oh. If the police records are true, she should have a tattoo on the back of her right hand, as Monokuma freely divulged that information. Alright, cried Taka, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Show us the back of your right hand and prove your innocence. Monokuma dispensed another unnecessary remark. Make sure you look real close. She might have covered it up with foundation. Junko had ordered Makuro to hide her tattoo with foundation, so Monokuma's information was entirely true. There was nothing Makuro could do except stay quiet. However, she wasn't staying quiet because her identity was about to be exposed. She was struck by the realization that her sister was completely serious about pinning this on her. Ooh. Why the hesitation? Shouted the foolishly honest Taka. As my classmate, I have complete faith in you. From behind him, Hifumi Yamada, the ultimate fanfic creator, murmured to himself as cold sweat ran down his cheeks. Well, look at that. I guess this is what we call a checkmate, huh? Why don't you just fess up already, you fucking bastard? In contrast to Fumi, Mondo Owada, the ultimate biker gang leader, was royally pissed. However, there was some students who were busy questioning Monokuma instead of Makuro. Hey, you're not coming to save us, shouted Leon Kawada, the ultimate baseball star. You should hurry up and charge in here already. Monokuma looked at Leon and shook his head softly. The police can't help you right now. Not only are you guys hostages, it's possible the entire school has been rigged with explosives and poisonous gas. I hacked into this Monokuma robot to investigate that for myself. Then what about everyone on that DVD? What about everyone inside the school? Asked Sayaka. The memory of the DVD she was forced to watch yesterday still weighed heavily on her mind, but Monokuma didn't have a clear answer. I don't know anything about any DVDs, but there are definitely terrorists causing havoc out here. Law enforcement around the world is in shambles trying to deal with this. That's impossible. Sayaka shuddered and collapsed to her knees. Sayaka! Next to her, Chihiro Fujisaki, the ultimate programmer, was unsure about what she should do. Behind her, two other girls stood silently. The first one was Toko Fukawa, the ultimate writing prodigy. She seemed to be trying very hard not to look at Makoto as he lay bleeding. Ah! The other was a quiet girl who hadn't talked about herself much, named Kyoko Kuriguri. Unlike Toko, Kyoko was watching everything intently, as if she were studying the scenes of a crime. From Makoto's breathing patterns to subtle changes in Makuro's facial expression, nothing was escaping her attention. Suddenly, Toko began nervously talking to Sakura. So anyway, let's just say that Monokuma woman, let's just say that Makura woman or whatever over there is a terrorist. Hurry up and beat her to death or something. We don't know that yet, said Sakura. My fists do not out justice based on simple speculation. Sakura tried to get near Makoto to examine his wounds, but Monokuma stood in her way, shouting, "Don't come any closer!" This meant that Makura was the only one who could get close to Makoto. She had ended countless lives on the battlefield, she knew from experience. If she didn't treat Makoto's wounds, he would die. His wounds were not immediately fatal, but if he continued losing blood, he would eventually slip into shock and die shortly after. Please, I need to treat Makoto first. Absolutely not, said Byakuya, harshly interrupting Makuro. Tying you up and examining the back of your right hand is our first priority. Hey, Makoto's in danger. Now's not the time for that, said Hina as she cast a worried glance at Makoto. She was still having trouble understanding the situation and hadn't decided if Makoto was suspicious or not. Byakuya was about to snap back at her, but Makuro's actions stunned him into silence. She took a deep breath and then Makuro removed the blonde wig from her head. Where there were two long blonde pigtails only a moment before, there was now short black hair. She cleared her face of all emotion, and when she spoke, her voice rang throughout the gym. I'm not Junko Enoshima. My name is Makuro Ikusaba. The students stared wide-eyed at her open confession. All she did was remove her wig and clear her emotions. But in doing so, the person the students had recognized as Junko Enoshima vanished from their sight. The terrorist that had taken her place continued to speak in a calm, stoic tone. I helped lock everyone inside this academy. The confession on a seaside cliff moment has finally arrived. The confession on a seaside cliff moment has finally arrived, Hifumi blurted out. What? Wigs are against school regulations, Junko. I mean, Makuro, shouted Taka. As if stirred by their cries of excitement, the other students began clamoring among themselves. Huh? Said Yasuhiro. So Makoto's wounds are, like, real? Does that mean that stuff about terrorists and whatever is all real too? So everything that's happened these past few days wasn't a bunch of staged events? As the reality of the situation began dawning on Yasuhiro, all Leon could say to him was, "Shut the hell up!" Byakuya just remained calm. Just remained calm and addressed Makuro in a condescending manner. What does your group want? If you were after money, you would have already tried to negotiate with me. Of course, I'd rather let them die than surrender to your ransom demands. Our purpose is to fill the world with despair. Byakuya scoffed at this notion and began to speak once again. I see. Monokuma said something similar, so that ideology is what fuels your terrorism. It's true. If you did anything to me, you would certainly fill the world with despair. But obviously that would be impossible for you. Hina couldn't believe what Byakuya was saying, and frowned as she muttered, How self-centered can you be? After confirming that Byakuya had no more questions for her, Makuro looked at Makoto, whose breathing had slowed, and let her voice show some emotion. But Makoto has nothing to do with this. You can't believe what Monokuma says. What did you say, bitch? Shouted Mondo. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're a terrorist, just like Monokuma said. Makuro looked away from Mondo and continued speaking. That's true, but Makoto isn't involved at all. Celeste coldly brushed her objection aside. I do not think trying to protect him will do you any good. After all, we all heard Makoto call you by your real name. That's... She had no words. There was nothing she could say to protect Makoto, even though Makoto was truly innocent. Though Makuro was the ultimate soldier, her powers were largely limited to battle. Even a normal high school student could outwit her when it comes to debate and negotiation. If she were the ultimate negotiator, she might be able to convince them that their memories had really been erased. But in her current situation, if she tried to bring up their memory loss, they would think it was a desperate excuse. Even Makuro knew that. But even if she didn't know what to say, she still knew what to do. Right now, we need to treat Makoto first. And then she started walking towards Makoto as if nothing had happened. To the others, it seemed like Makuro had decided to abruptly change the subject. Hold on, we will immediately take Makoto to the nurse's office for treatment. However, we must tie you up. This was Sakuro's honest demand. But there was no way Makuro could accept it. If she was separated from Makoto, there'd be no telling what Monokuma would do to him. Between Mondo's hot temper and Byakuya's cold heart, Makoto could easily sustain further injuries under the pretense of interrogation. Furthermore, among these students, Makuro knew she was the only one who had experienced treating wounds due to her time with Fenrir. After mulling that over, she narrowed her eyes and went silent. Her mind was made up. She was determined to fight her way out of here and escape with Makoto. I apologize, but I need you to fall asleep right now. As she said that, Sakura instantly positioned herself behind Makuro. She was completely within her blind spot. To a normal person, it would have seemed like Sakura had suddenly vanished. After moving faster than any human being could see, Sakura's equally fast hands launched a blow towards the back of Makuro's neck. However, sorry Sakura, but I need to get out of here. Makuro parried Sakura's fist with a spinning roundhouse kick. Ugh. Sakura raised an eyebrow at the unexpected counterattack. Makuro tried to use the momentum of her kick to sweep Sakura's feet out from under her. However, Sakura dodged and instinctively struck back against Makuro's pivot leg. But Makuro was faster and jumped up, aiming a tornado kick at Sakura's chin. Sakura deflected the attack with one arm, then both combatants leapt backwards, glared, and charged simultaneously. Every blow they dealt was parried and countered by the other, and though they were both unarmed, the sound of their battle echoed throughout the gym. It was like a typhoon had been compressed to the size of a car and set loose inside the gym. The other students were powerless to stop them. All they could do was stare at the breathtaking dance of death unfolding before them. After 10 minutes had passed, the enormous sound of one final impact rang throughout the gym. The two warriors leapt back once again and breathed heavily as they stared each other down. My mistake. Though it's only been a few days, I cannot believe I had not noticed such an impressive fighter was hiding among us. In addition to the surprise Sakura felt, it was as if the battle had left her energized. Makura, on the other hand, looked down at her arm, confirmed it had been wounded during the battle, and thought to herself, "She's strong. I don't think Sakura is even taking this seriously right now." Despite being constantly surrounded by firearms, blades, traps, and explosives during her time with Fenrir, this was the first time she had ever been wounded. Makura was powerless before the might of the woman known as the ultimate martial artist, and the strongest woman in the world. Just as I thought, I can't beat Sakura with my bare hands alone. If she had been directly ordered to kill Sakura, Makura would have opted to either snipe her from a distance or poison her. At this close range, she would need an assault rifle just to stand a fighting chance. I don't have time for this. She looked at Makoto and confirmed that his breathing had grown even shallower. I need to hurry. But at that moment, she had no one to turn to for help. Suddenly, Makura had an idea. It was true that gaining an ally in this situation was impossible. However, she could still turn one person into her enemy's enemy. Makura took a deep breath before she charged at Sakura. Then she immediately fainted and charged at a different girl. Toko, who had been cowering in fear from the battle between Sakura and Makuro in the corner of the gym. This is bad. Sakura was caught off guard and tried to run after her, but Makuro was one step ahead and reached Toko first. Why me? I'm sorry. Wait, hold on, I'm a glur. Makuro jabbed Toko in her solar plexus and she fell into her arms. Taka and Hina yelled out in shock. This is bad. She plans to use Toko as a hostage. Toko! In contrast to their shocked face, Byakuya just snickered and coldly remarked, "You fool, do you really think we care if you take someone we just met a few days ago as your hostage?" Bakura just softly glanced at Bakura and replied, "You didn't meet her a few days ago." "What did you say?" "You met her 2 years ago." "Huh?" Byakuya scowled. Makura ignored him and held her bloody arm in front of Toko's face. And then she yelled into her ears, "Wake up, Genocide Jack!" Oh! It seemed so random and out of place. Why would Makura mention the name of a notorious serial killer right now? Students looked at each other with confusion when suddenly Toko, who had been groaning in pain, suddenly kicked off of the floor of the gym with renewed vigor. She leapt into the air much higher than any normal human should have been able to, while hovering several meters in the air. Toko twirled faster than a professional figure skater. This caused her skirt to flutter, revealing multiple pairs of sparkling scissors. Countless tailor marks were scratched into her legs, like a kill count carved into a fighter jet. If not for this situation, Toko's glamorous jumps and spins would have been a sight to behold. The girl, formerly known as Toko Fukahawa, cackled wildly, her red eyes sparkling as her absurdly long tongue flopped out of her mouth. "You called for me, and so I appear. I've got a murder IOU for YOU. Quahahahaha. Toko?" The situation had changed so drastically that even Sayaka, who was silent until now, spoke up. Hey, you flash in the pan? You flash in the pan? Don't treat Genocide Jack like that depressing little Four Eyes. That dirty girl doesn't bathe herself at all, so I gotta put in 5 times the effort to rub myself down in the shower. Eek! Toko's sudden change in personality sent the students clamoring among themselves. Hey! Leon yelled. What the hell does that mean? Monokuma just shook his head. There are some things even I don't understand. The students continued to panic at the strange turn of events. Toko, now calling herself Genocide Jack, took out a set of scissors from under her skirt and snipped them with glee as she looked around the gym. Huh? Man, it's been a while since I got to stretch my legs. So what were you guys gonna do here at the gym while I was snoozing away? Have an orgy? I understand. I totally understand. You guys need to cut up your clothes so you can feel even naughtier. Yeah, right. Why the hell would I do that for you, dumbasses? My scissors are only meant for cutting the supple, tender flesh of adorable boys. Genocide Jack was causing a ruckus, but when she saw Makoto laying on the floor, she tilted her head once again. Huh? Big Mac, you're like totally about to die. What's the deal? Did the world fill you with so much despair that you all came here to commit mass suicide? That's so hot. But why are you starting without me? Toko, cried Hina. Get a hold of yourself. Genocide Jack ignored Hina and let her emotions run unchecked, jumping and dancing with excitement as she held her scissors. Aw, geez, I wanted to stab Big Mac's side myself. This spot right here, where the ribs are kind of showing already. He's not even screaming right now, though. What does that mean? Oh, well, maybe I can just get used to this feeling of alienation instead. Ha 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 ha! I have no idea what's going on anymore, shouted Yasuhiro. This is all the aliens' fault. Yasuhiro buried his head into his arms, but no one was paying attention to him. The students' attention was entirely focused on Genocide Jack. Using that to her advantage, Makuro began sneaking over to Makoto. As she cautiously picked him up, she confirmed that his body temperature was starting to decrease. I can still make it there in time. Though she was carrying another person, Makuro managed to soften the sound of her footsteps as she ran for the gym's doors. By the time the students heard Makuro open the door, it was already too late. She had managed to escape the gym with Makoto. However, not everyone was unaware of what Makuro was doing. Monokuma saw her movement out of the corner of his eye, but chose not to tell the students. And one other person, Kyoko Kirigiru. She saw Makuro carry Makoto away, but she did not inform the others as she watched them leave in silence. As everyone wrestled with their own personal thoughts and speculations, Hope's Peak Academy began walking a path toward a completely different chaos. Ooh. With Makoto on her back, Makuro took several trophies from the gym entrance hall, and after passing through the door leading to the hallway, she jammed the trophies through the door handles. Though Sakura could easily destroy these makeshift locks, they could buy Makuro a few extra seconds. Then Makuro started running to the nurse's office, the place she had last spoken to Makoto. Everything necessary for performing first aid could be found there. Her little sister was her enemy. Her fellow Ultimate students were her enemy. Her only ally right now was Makoto, who was on the verge of death. Makuro knew that even she wasn't her own ally right now. Amidst all the chaos, amidst her sister's betrayal and nearly being killed, she believed. She believed that she was the only one who truly understood her little sister. That's why she felt like she had to protect her. That's right, you didn't do anything wrong, Junko. You just wanted to feel despair, that's all, right? Because you love me, that's why you wanted to kill me. You were just trying to feel despair, right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I failed to bring you despair. But at the same time, she wondered, if she saves Makoto and betrays her sister by disrupting her plan, wouldn't that fill her with even stronger despair? Wouldn't that make her happy? But betray Junko. What should I do? Makuro closed her eyes and listened to Makoto's weak breaths. What should I do, Makoto? On a battlefield where all you need to do is kill and survive, Makuro was invincible. She could suppress all her emotions and fully immerse herself in becoming a perfect killing machine. But on this twisted battlefield of daily high school life, she could no longer keep her emotions in check, especially around her little sister. Makuro, the ultimate soldier, was beginning to question being ultimate despair. The impulses of the normal high school girl inside her were starting to affect her state of mind. Even so, the poor girl continued to run through the dark hallway, clinging to this conflict within herself. She was now walking along a narrow, hair-thin path. A path between the hope of Makoto Naegi and the despair of Junko Enoshima. Ooh. See, I don't get what this is. Like, it shows like 2 buttons. Oh shit, we're on page 244. Meanwhile, Everyone still in the gym was left in a state of complete confusion. Toko was famous for being a prolific author, but even though she came across as unsociable and depressing, her mind-blowing transformation seemed to have just tossed all that aside. Oh, I can't. Okay. I was just wondering what that does. Toko is Genocide Jack? Sayaka trembled with fear as Jack tilted her head and stuck out her tongue. Huh? What's with this reception, you guys? You guys didn't know who I was? Have I been found out? Or have you known all along? And why was the sullen samurai dressed like that? That outfit didn't look good on her at all. Sullen samurai was probably referring to Makuro, which means Toko already knew Makuro in advance. Confronted by that shocking truth, the students had no idea where to begin talking. So many things were clearly wrong by this point. But there were few students, such as Byakuya and Kyoko, who opted to remain calm and observe the situation. Alright, someone better spill it. Who gave Makoto an extra mouth to feed? I don't care if you want to stab him or slice him. I just can't forgive whoever put that ugly-ass hole in Big Mac's side. Toko, no. Genocide Jack spun her scissors in her hands. As she spoke, her emotions and facial expressions constantly changed. Even without the threat of her sisters, she exuded an aura of danger that made her unapproachable. The flank steak of a young boy like macaroons is like a bluebird that pops out of a golden egg. If you would have just let me handle it, I would have killed him so good that even Tiltil and Miltil would be eager to die. But poor Macutie's heart and soul had been stomped on by such a sloppy kill. That actually sounds pretty exciting too, but I decline. Toko, you're not making any sense, screamed Hina. What in the world happened to you? Genocide Jack answered by pointing her sisters at Hina. What happened to me? I got bored, that's what. That sourpuss locked me up a few days ago, but when she went unconscious, I thought I'd finally get to do my thing. But I woke up for all this. My cutie's soaked up with blood and I've got no clue what's going on. It's so damn confusing, all I can do is laugh. Hee 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 hee. No one seemed to be able to get a straight answer out of Jack, so Hifumi made a timid remark. I've dealt with girls like this in my 2D dating games, but this doesn't even compare. It's like there's an SSS difficulty level to clear with her. I can't believe you'd even think about her as someone worth clearing, mumbled Leon. It's clear that things were going nowhere. And as if she were responding to everyone else's expectations, Sakura stepped forward. She might be in the throes of confusion. I should try to restrain her for now. As soon as she heard that, Genocide Jack stopped moving, stuck out her lizard-like tongue, and grinned wickedly. Ooh, what's up? Are you really gonna fight me, Battle Ogre? Too bad, my lovely sisters are only for cutting through adorable boys. Women should just stay home. I won't taint my scissors with your filthy blood. Replied Sakura. It seems my words are useless on you. Sakura entered a fighting stance, determined to restrain Jack. But Jack knew she couldn't win in a fair fight and adopted a strange stance of her own. In a normal fight, Jack would obviously lose to the ogre, but if Jack focused just on dodging attacks, the outcome of the fight would never be hard to foresee. Of course, Genocide Jack's physical abilities were not only obvious to a few of the students in the first place. The two women exchanged hostile stares as the other students gulped nervously and watched. Except for one person. Kyoko was watching something else. She was watching Monokuma, who was in the corner of the gym, unmoving, as white noise emitted from his speakers. He had stopped moving the moment everyone's attention focused on Sakura and Toko. It's possible that Madari's hacking had been disrupted, but an infinite number of other possibilities were swirling around in Kyoko's mind. She brushed back her hair with a gloved hand and continued to watch. Though she couldn't fully remember her talent, the actions she was taking right now were fueled by pure instinct. The strange situations that kept occurring in front of her were shaking her to her very core. Her mind worked diligently to scoop up countless amounts of information from her vast sea of memories. And as they were synchronizing with the synapses firing in her brain, Sakura and Toko kicked off to the ground at the same time, and an intense impact rang throughout the gym. Oh, hold up. Thanks to the heated battle that was unfolding in the gymnasium, Makuro Ikusaba was able to buy more time than she had imagined. As soon as she entered the nurse's office, she rummaged around for medical supplies and did what she could to stop the bleeding. Though still quite shallow, Makoto's breathing slowly stabilized. Makuro let out a little sigh of relief. However, even though she was somehow able to stop the bleeding, she wasn't out of the woods yet. Miraculously enough, it seemed like none of Makoto's major arteries or organs were damaged. Was this perhaps thanks to his ultimate luck? Maybe he wasn't actually all that lucky. After all, the only sort of medical treatment he could hope for was partial at best. Makuro couldn't decide. If only I could do a blood transfusion. The nurse's office should have had several blood packs for transfusions. Makuro suspected that Makoto's blood type might be written in his e-handbook. But as she reached over to search his pockets... Ha! I see you're reaching for a sleeping boy's clothes. What in the world is about to happen next? Adults can keep playing, but you kids better press the B button, okay? Boo-hoo! Makuro turned toward the familiar voice and saw Monokuma standing before her. You're all alone with Makoto right now. Just think of me as a cute wild animal and let your lust lead the way. As the headmaster, I must prevent any illicit sexual relationships, but physical education classes are just fine, Missy. Though he looked just like the one that was in the gym, it was clearly a different Monokuma. Multiple Monokumas had been placed throughout the entire academy, so it wasn't a stretch for him to suddenly appear out of nowhere. Regardless, the same person was controlling all of them. Makuro had been wary of Monokumas attacking her while she was treating Makoto's wounds, but his appearance at this particular moment seemed to take her by surprise. Junko? Asked Makuro cautiously. Monokuma tilted his head along with his entire upper body inquisitively. Junko? Who's that? Junko? I've never heard of that country before. No more jokes. Answer me, Junko. You were planning to kill me earlier, right? Junko? Junko this, Junko that. What's your problem? I'm telling you, I'm Monokuma. It must be a big disappointment if you can't even remember something like that. You're not just a disappointment as a person, you're a disappointment as a sister, too. You're too skinny and your brain has nothing but muscles. And your personality is just unbearable. I'm sorry, said Makuro. She didn't need to apologize, but hearing her little sister call her a disappointment, yet again, was enough to make the ultimate soldier recoil. Monokuma ignored her and her current situation, climbed on top of Makoto's barely breathing body, and began poking his cheeks. So what are you going to do with Makoto now? I'm really interested in human mating habits, you know. What are you? Asked Makuro, before trailing off. Monokuma lowered his tone and began whispering into her ear. Boo-hoo-hoo! Makoto's a pretty nice guy, huh? He even sacrificed himself to save you. He's so generous that it's actually hopeless. Boo-hoo-hoo! He's not dead yet, insisted Makuro. Despite her firm tone, she couldn't hide the fear lingering in her voice. Boo-hoo-hoo! That's the most disappointing thing about you. You can't even say, I won't let him die. I won't let him die, Junko. Makuro could barely get a word in as Monokuma erupted into poo-hoo-hoos and ha-ha-has and continued to torment her. As if you could do that. Too bad, no regrets. See you tomorrow. Ha-ha-ha-ha. Is this all because Makoto was the first person to smile at you? You, a disappointing, depressing, unladylike, inhuman killing machine. Despite denying that he was Junko, Monokuma began speaking at length about Makuro's past. Oh! This contradiction was very much like Junko, and Makuro was so shaken that all she could do was watch the bear prattle on and on. This contradiction... Oh. Only the fit survive in this world. The only thing that kind-hearted people can do is die, you know? As proof, you're gonna watch Makoto die really soon. Poo-hoo-hoo. He won't die. Makuro's tone of voice had become irregular ever since she took off her Junko wig. Aside from her conversations with Makoto, everything she said as Junko was from a script that her sister had written. But now, there was no script for Makuro to rely on anymore. Makuro was treating Monokuma like she would treat her own sister. If the other students saw her acting so weak, they'd never believe she was the same person who fought Sakura in the gym. And not just that, if anyone from her mercenary past could see her now, a stark change in attitude might make them think she was someone else entirely. Monokuma continued to rail against Makuro. Nope, he's gonna die. I know it's sad, but you just have to face the facts. Monokuma wiggled his limbs and danced around, then pointed right at Makuro's face. Because Makoto is going to die by your hands. Huh? And fighting among the terrorists. The big bad terrorists silenced the weak-willed Makoto before he can leak any information. Doesn't that happen all the time? In the end, all the desperate things you said in the gym turned out to be lies you told just to escape. Boo-hoo-hoo! Makuro frowned at Monokuma. You can't do that, Junko. I won't let you do that. She blurted out those words in a trembling voice. Makuro was gripped with confusion about what she had just said. Am I defying Junko right now? Why? It was a strange feeling. To Makuro, it was like she was standing on the ledge of a tall building and imagining what would happen if she jumped. A destructive feeling akin to holding a friend's baby and wondering what would happen if you tripped and fell. Before she knew it, fear and anxiety had suddenly taken control of Makuro's heart. As a member of Fenrir, and as ultimate despair, Makuro had killed innumerable people. She had handled live grenades before. She had descended from the sky in a parachute as anti-aircraft weaponry fired all around her. Her heart never wavered on the battlefield, but now it felt like it could collapse at any second. Monokuma, however, was as stable as a tree, and slightly tilted his head to the side. Huh? Weren't you listening to my story? I'm not the one who's gonna kill Makoto. You are! What are you saying, Junko? Monokuma began giving a strange explanation to a very confused Makuro. Do you know what the suspension bridge effect really means? It means you push the person you love off a bridge and they'll be yours for eternity. I haven't heard that at all. Life doesn't always follow what your textbooks say. It's sad, but that's what love is. His words made no sense, and Makuro couldn't think of anything to say as she stood there dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Monokuma continued his little speech, intentionally saying things meant to antagonize Makuro. Basically, this is your big chance, you know. If you kill Makoto right here and now, nobody will ever take him away from you again. Makoto Naegi, dead by dawn. The last name he ever spoke was Makuro Ikusaba. The last person he ever smiled at was Makuro Ikusaba. Doesn't that sound wonderful? There was a certain appeal to Monokuma's twisted suggestion, and Makuro found herself unsure of her own judgment. This is wrong. It has to be wrong. But it's really Junko saying all this, so doesn't that mean it's right? No, this isn't Junko, it's Monokuma. Monokuma, 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 Monokuma. And are you sure you want to help Makoto? Once he gets better, he's gonna know everything. He'll know what you did to your classmates. I can't believe you would actually erase your friends' memories of their times together and force them to kill each other. Makoto might get mad at you and say, our real enemy isn't the bear, it's her. Do you really want him to blame me for this? Makuro's face turned pale. Boo-hoo-hoo! Or are you gonna kill the others? If everyone except you and Makoto dies, you'll be able to spend the rest of your school life together. We can't hold a class trial with only 2 people. It might be a good idea for you both to live the rest of your lives in this academy forever. No, that's wrong. And what are you gonna do if his memories return? It's not like you were dating Makoto or anything. You were just watching him from afar the whole time. Man, you're so shy. You can shoot people's hearts and brains no problem, but you can't even woo some stupid boy into liking you. Do you want to know who Makoto had a crush on before his memories were taken away? Poo-hoo-hoo. Makura trembled as Monokuma continued pressing the issue, gradually loosening the screws, keeping her heart secure. So Makura chose to pretend she didn't hear anything at all. All emotion vanished from her face, and she looked silently for Makoto's handbook. If you're looking for his blood type, it's not written in the handbook. Makuro's face turned pale. Within 5 seconds, her plan to ignore Monokuma had already failed. But since your headmaster is made up of 50% kindness, I'll tell you anyway. Makoto's blood type is B. As soon as she heard him say that, all the anxiety, horror, hostility, malice, and dread churning within Makuro had completely vanished. Thank you, Junko. Makuro's eyes sparkled without a hint of suspicion, so she turned her back to Monokuma without a hint of suspicion, and walked toward the refrigerator containing the blood packs. Fresh blood packs should have been prepared before the plan took effect. They'll last in cold storage for 21 days. They should still be good. Despite her emotionless face, Makuro let herself feel a small amount of satisfaction as she took a blood pack from the refrigerator. As Monokuma watched her, his normal emotionless eyes twitched ever so slightly. If the third party could see his face right now, or even if the other students could see his face right now, they'd wonder, is Monokuma surprised? That's right. They'd have the same shocked look on their faces as if they were seeing Monokuma for the first time. At that moment, a whisper crept out of Monokuma's emotionless face. There should be a limit to how disappointing you can be. It was far quieter than a mosquito's wings. Even with her battle-hardened hearing, Makuro couldn't hear what he said. Monokuma shook his head and the voice returned to normal. It's not like I care that you, the ultimate despair, has hope in anything. It's not like I expected much from you to begin with, so this'll at least help me feel despair. Huh? But seriously, you disappoint me. Just so you know, despair and disappointment are completely different things, okay? They're as different as bears and pandas. What are you? Makuro's body started to shake as she turned back to look at Monokuma. He hadn't started talking any differently than usual. Junko hadn't turned off the voice modulator and started talking in a real voice or anything. And yet Makuro was utterly terrified. She was terrified on instinct. Not as a soldier. Half the reason she was terrified was because of her instinct as the ultimate despair. And the other half was because she was Junko's older sister. Even through Monokuma, her instincts were telling her that Junko was annoyed with her. Junko? Well, why are you so annoyed? Is it because I betrayed you? Or is it because I didn't die like you wanted me to? Sulked Monokuma. I'm beyond annoyed. I'm really, really angry, and I'm really, really disappointed right now. I'm so pissed I could take a rage nap right now. Monokuma's anger didn't seem any different from his usual anger toward the students, but Makuro could instinctively sense another emotion mixed with it. Right now she could feel that Junko was feeling hopeless disappointment. It's normal for someone who's disappointed to lose hope, but for ultimate despair, disappointment means something else entirely. To them, disappointment was tantamount to losing despair itself. Makuro was a member of Ultimate Despair. At her sister's behest, Makuro had soiled her hands many times in order to fill the world with despair. Despite her pride towards being a member of Ultimate Despair, there's a clear difference between Makuro and her sister. Junko Enoshima was despair incarnate. She was born in despair, letting it infect other people's hopes so it could rot them from the inside out, twisting them into her own image. For Junko, feeling hope was its own despair. Creating despair in others created despair in herself, which caused her to feel both intense pain and intense bliss. Junko had walked the fracture, created from the conflict between pleasure and penance, all her life. Eventually, the fracture would widen until it swallowed the world and tore it in half. But Makuro, on the other hand, had neither hope nor despair for the world, at least not when she was a member of Fenrir. Ever since she was a child, Makuro believed she was meant to spread despair because of her sister. She didn't harbor any ill will toward the world. She simply accepted she was meant to spread despair, chose to walk the same path as her sister. The doubt she felt was only a recent development. When Junko told her about the plan, when she watched the world burn at the hands of terrorists wearing Monokuma masks, she never wavered once. However, as soon as she heard about her sister's plan to make their classmates kill each other, Makoto included, a strange feeling began to stir within her. What started as a seed of doubt soon grew into a thorny vine ensnaring Makuro's feet. As soon as she disguised herself as Junko and finished meeting the other students, as soon as she had confirmed that everyone's memories had been completely taken away, that vine began tightening around Makuro's heart. They're gone. Junko's the only one who knows about me now. That's it. But that's no problem. It's just like old times. Things will never go back to how they used to be, but that's fine. This should be fine. She had relinquished the past 2 years she had spent with her friends so she could betray them and deliver death and despair unto them. Though her heart ached, Makuro was beyond feeling guilt or remorse for her actions. But the question, why does my heart ache like this, still remained unanswered. Perhaps that's why she spent so much time talking to Makoto when he was in the nurse's office. And when Makoto gave her that one particular answer, something changed inside of her. In return, I promise that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you. The words Makuro blurted out to Makoto weren't improvised to further her role as Junko. It was an honest sentiment from the bottom of her heart. She was even planning to ask Junko herself if Makoto could somehow be spared from her plan. Over the past 2 years, Makuro's interest had been slowly shifting away from her sister and toward the world itself. By extension, her interest also included Makoto, the first person to ever smile at her and make her feel connected to the world. He was like a sapling of pure honesty that had taken root in Makuro's heart. But by the time she realized that, the tree had already rotted. As Makuro struggled to understand the situation, Monokuma let out a sigh and said, "I wonder which part of you is a wolf anyway. You're just a dog that blindly follows Junko's orders. What does the tattoo on your hand even mean? Are you just a bitch who's pledged her loyalty to her owner? I bet Toko would say that. I'm positive." Monokuma continued to talk as Makuro stood in confusion. "I was obviously lying when I said Makoto's blood type is B." "What?" cried Makuro. "You lied, Junko?" "A normal person would have been suspicious. I never thought you'd actually believe me just now." "I must have misplaced my eyes because I totally did not see that coming. Not even with my ability to predict the future. How shocking. Geez, I'm about to start crying my eyes out like some sort of robot cat. Seriously." "It's going to be okay, Junko," said Makuro. "I know our plan kind of fell apart, but I'm still on your side. Are you feeling all right? Because I'll do anything." Snap! Her sound came from Monokuma's mouth. "That sound was one of my circuits overloading. It's been so long since I felt this angry. Meet me on the roof of the school. I'll smash out all your baby teeth." Monokuma started shadowboxing in front of Makuro, who remained frozen in place, clutching a blood pack in her hand. She still looked confused, and Monokuma threw up his arms in frustration. "You're so disappointing, I can't even predict it anymore. Roar!" A threatening roar burst from Monokuma's mouth as he leapt at Makuro with his sharp claws extended. "Ugh!" At that moment, her face became completely emotionless. It was not a conscious action. The defensive instinct she honed during her time with Fenrir temporarily suppressed her emotions as she countered Monokuma's attack. Makuro grabbed a nearby IV stand and used it to parry Monokuma's claws. However, Monokuma's claws seemed to be made with a special alloy and easily sliced the bar in half diagonally. But instead of following up his attack, Monokuma continued talking to Makuro. "I guess you're not much of a disappointment when it comes to fighting. In fact, if you were so pathetic that you died from that single attack, that would have been interesting in its own way. But right now, you're just incompetent at everything." "I'm sorry," said Makuro. "I couldn't help blocking your attack. But there's no way I can fight you, Junko. After all, I'm all you have. I'm the only one who understands you at all." Makuro's words were riddled with endless dismay. The contrast between her usual stoic self and the way she was acting now was so stark, people might assume she had multiple personalities. However, Monokuma just quietly stared at her. She was perfectly still as if all of... or he was perfectly still, as if all of his functions had powered down completely. But Makuro continued to share her feelings. There's no way I can just leave you alone. And then Monokuma broke his silence, but at that moment, a monitor in the nurse's office lit up, displaying a girl's face, Junko Enoshima. At the same time, a voice completely unlike Monokuma's began to play from the speakers. Hey, Makuro. Junko? It has been several days since Makuro had heard her sister's real voice. Though her face remained emotionless, excitement sparked in her eyes. However, that shine immediately dulled. I'm grateful to you, Makuro. I mean it. Junko's voice emanating from the speaker sounded very gentle and kind. Junko? I'm really sorry. I said so many mean things to you. I even tried to kill you earlier, and I was about to make you do something horrible just now. Even though I know about your feelings towards Makoto. I don't. You don't have to force yourself. Even if you didn't notice, it was totally obvious to anyone looking at you. You never cared about the class photos, but when Makoto said he was going to take one, you made sure you were facing the camera. And then Junko Enoshima, the ultimate despair, flashed a smile. A pure, sweet smile. On the monitor, she looked like a normal high school girl teasing her older sister. And yet Makuro could feel despair and anxiety encasing themselves around her. I always thought you should have tried hard to take pictures with Makoto. But I guess that's what makes you so disappointing. Still, even though you're disappointing and annoying, I still love you. Makuro trembled upon hearing those words. I love you. That's all she ever wanted to hear her sister say. Makuro believed. No matter what Junko said, she believed she really loved her. She believed she was the only one who could truly understand the despair known as Junko Enoshima. She was naive. As soon as she heard Junko say, I love you, Makuro realized she never completely understood her sister. It was only at this moment that Makuro finally understood her sister's feelings. Junko's words right now were kind. Perhaps that kindness was completely honest. The words I love you might have been true as well. However, for Junko Enoshima, this was her way of saying goodbye. She was severing the ties between them. It was painfully clear to Makuro. And then, before she could even say anything, the girl on the monitor made a remark that cut Makuro to the bone. I'm sure someday you'll make your dreams come true. Ultimate despairs never talk to each other like this. A simple truth stabbed into Makuro's heart. Junko had no further use for her. Her own sister was parting ways with her. Makuro had dedicated over 10 years of her life to the cause of ultimate despair, and at this moment it all counted for nothing. But those years no longer mattered to Makuro. Her sister's rejection was more than enough to send her into the depths of despair. That's why Makuro, even now, clung to a small sliver of hope. Meanwhile, Junko was still on the monitor. Yeah, right. Did you really think I'd say something that nice? You're so annoying. Can't you just hurry up and disappear already? Makuro hoped Junko would say something like that. She hoped that she'd start verbally abusing her again, or call her useless and incompetent. Makuro was no masochist, but she'd prefer to be showered with bullets and contempt than endure this kind of emotional pain. But... I love you, Makuro. Bye-bye. The monitor went black, leaving Makuro to process the horrible goodbye she just received. And as if on cue, Monokuma started moving again. Isn't family love so nice? By the way, did you know that in about half of all murder cases, the killer is a family member? Monokuma spoke in his usual tone of voice, but it was unclear if his words were getting through to Makuro. Makuro let the blood pack in her hand fall to the floor, and tightened her grip on the iron bar she was still holding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Junko, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. She mumbled quietly, as if she were chanting a spell, and walked past the blood pack on the floor to Makoto's bedside with the iron bar in her hand. I'll do it properly. I'll make sure I do it. So... Oh, said Monokuma, perking up. What are you gonna do properly, dude, to Mako? With that... What are you gonna properly do to Makoto with that big, thick rod you got there? Are you gonna do him? Or are you gonna do him in? Either way, I'm starting to feel some heart-throbbing excitement. Makuro looked like she had completely broken. Monokuma walked closer to her with eager anticipation. Suddenly, Monokuma's body silently floated into the air. Huh? With no expression on his face, Monokuma tried to see what had just happened to him. And in the blink of an eye, an iron bar ripped through his body. The tip of the bar, which had been cut diagonally earlier into a sharp point, went straight through Monokuma and stabbed into a surveillance camera. The lens was completely destroyed, and the camera shot out sparks as it broke down. The iron bar was still stabbed into the surveillance camera as Monokuma dangled from the other end. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but only static came out. Hold on 1 second. A few seconds later, his functions came to a complete stop. Without making a sound at all, Makura had kicked Monokuma into the air. Alright, sorry about that. Someone wanted my attention. Without making a sound at all, Makura had kicked Monokuma into the air. As soon as Monokuma's power source and his bomb circuit had perfectly aligned with the surveillance camera in the nurse's office, Makura plunged the iron bar into all three of them. No normal human has the skill to utilize such a technique. Not even an ultimate. All the hesitation with Makura had vanished. Her eyes sparkled like a panther stalking its prey at night. A tense aura surrounded Makuro, even more so than when she fought Sakura earlier. Ignoring Monokuma's lifeless form, she looked at Makoto as he breathed softly and remembered her sister's parting words. So this is despair, she mumbled to herself. So sorry, Junko. I never really understood what despair was. She spoke without emotion, like a machine. But it's going to be alright now, I finally understand. Hidden within her, passions began to stir. So, I'll make sure I make you happy, Junko. I'll make sure I fill you with despair. I'll save Makoto. I'll make sure the others don't die. I'll let them escape from this place. I'll deal with the people on the outside, too. You invested so much time and killed so many people for the sake of this plan. And I'll destroy every last remnant of it. For you. This was not an act of vengeance toward the sister who had abandoned her. Yeah, I've read. This was an act of mercy. Stuck between the ultimate despair and the hope she gained from Makoto, Makuro was being refined into something that was unlike despair or hope, and she had no way of knowing where her path would lead her. Ooh, is this the next chapter? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Kaden, grab it! Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jackie continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements. But when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks. Oh my. Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly. They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office, though. On their way there, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Makuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. Sorry about that. Thought my kids needed me. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Besaki Madari. So the students assumed that Madari had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Makuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting there recently. Looks like they're already gone, Mondo remarked, but as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him. I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues. Huh? Asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening. Clues? Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. Yes, there may be clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you'd be the best candidate for investigating machinery. Sakura spoke up. But isn't that dangerous? Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Makuro, she had joined the other students in searching for the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, Chihiro and I will just be in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio broadcasts from the outside world. You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens. Sakura left the nurse's office. How did she destroy Monokuma like this? As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. She zeroed in on one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found and let out a small sigh before she spoke. Chihiro, let me apologize to you in advance. Huh? I dragged you into this gamble of mine, so if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help. What does that mean? But instead of answering Chihiro's questions, Kyoko started talking to one of the empty beds. Let me say this first. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it in its entirety. Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The Ultimate lowered her eyes and turned to the Ultimate programmer to make a request. Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recorder function? Do you also have a microphone? Yeah. I want you to use that to record everything we're about to hear. Huh? But there's no one here. As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma's parts to her laptop and turned on the record function. I'm sure we'll pick up every sound in this room now, said Chihiro nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. So, what were you going to do if I'd told everyone that I'd found Makoto? When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the Ultimate Programmer was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. A blood pack was hidden next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it seemed to be some kind of saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge, she was already surprised that Makoto had been in the nurse's office this whole time. Not only that, but Kyoko wasn't talking to the bed that Makoto was under, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding was clinging to the frame of the bed, like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anybody there. Though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under the bed for so long, she could at least understand that their strength was beyond normal human levels. There's no question that the person hiding under the bed was Kuro Ikusaba. But you pretended not to notice. Why? Makuro's voice was as cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as she responded. So I wanted to hear your side of the story. Hold on, guys. I'll be back in like 5 minutes. Alright, sorry about that break. I had to get my son ready for bed. Because I wanted to hear your side of the story.
Uh-oh.
I knew you were hiding under the bed.
Uh-oh.
Yeah! Compared to the others, the frame was slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see something like that. Yeah! Mikuro seemed to come to a similar conclusion and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. There you go, Boo. Her face was stoic and cold compared to the bomb inside of Monokuma. Oh, her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mikuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against the wall and let her arms fall to her side as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kyoko thought about this simple question for a while, as if she were searching within her own heart for the answer. If I have to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kyoko quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted into the school. She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her, but Kyoko didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the methodology that's been instilled into me. I see. I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko. But before I listen to what you have to say, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it? Makuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as if she were asking it of herself as well. What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy? The answer to that question was simple. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. That answer marked a turning point for both girls. Thank you. I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented a theory. If my memory loss wasn't just a coincidence, then you... No, your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility. Possibility? Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Toko hostage. You claim that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that might actually be true. The fact that Makoto called out Makuro's name, the things that Makuro confirmed and denied, Genocide Jack's outlandish claims, these key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Toko's memories were also erased, like mine, but I don't think their circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memories can be controlled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years. What do you mean? Chihiro cried, still working on connecting her laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Makuro. We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at the school. But it's possible that we were simply made to think that's what happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope Speak Academy, and our memories of that time were completely erased. It's even possible that we weren't even Ultimates at all, just random people who've been implanted with 16 years worth of false memories. Though Kyoko's claim sounded ridiculous, her face was completely serious. She looked up at Makuro once again. Which means I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth. Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence. But she didn't let the silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypothesis. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Makuro. I have no intention of blindly believing what you're going to say, or what that self-proclaimed hacker who took over Monokuma said. She paused and lowered her eyes again, then declared with powerful determination. Even so, I intend to come to the conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. Hold on. Even so, I tend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. But I can only do that if you trust me and tell me the truth. Kyoko's conviction was clear from her voice. Makuro's eyes narrowed slightly and a tapestry of emotions flashed across her face as she looked towards Kyoko. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. That's right, I completely forgot. You were like that. Makuro repeated this to herself softly and then faced Kyoko and declared, "That must be why Junko took care to erase more of your memories compared to the others." Very well, I'll tell you everything. And after Makuro placed Makoto back onto the bed, she began to mechanically tell a story. The story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair. A girl who only felt truly happy when she was filled with despair herself. A plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that. How the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Makuro provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded even more outrageous than Kyoko had expected. And through her story, Kyoko was able to learn the truth about herself. Who she is and why she came to the academy. The fate of the academy's real headmaster. Kyoko's father. As she listened to Makuro's story, Kyoko remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps her memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no guarantee Kyoko would even believe her story. After Makuro finished speaking, Kyoko stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she was able to listen to Makuro's story without interrupting her or dismissing it as nonsense. Makuro continued. You don't have to believe me. After all, any pictures that could prove my story are with Junko. All I can do is talk.
Did you change food?
Mm-hmm.
Did you need to do anything?
Mm-mm.
You gave him his gummy?
Yep.
Okay, I gave Caden one already. You didn't give him one.
Nope.
Right? Okay, he's good then.
Yep, they're both good.
Alright, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Love you.
Love you too. After she said that, Makuro silently walked toward the entrance to the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. But even if you don't believe me, you still listened to everything I had to say, so Kyoko, Chihiro, thank you. After apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Makoto lay, breathing weakly. Make sure Makoto stays rested. When he wakes up, make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please? Of course, but what are you going to do now? Asked Kyoko. Makuro straightened herself up. Despair. I need to make Junko feel despair. Makuro continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. There's nothing else I can do. No, there is something you can do. Huh? Makuro stopped walking as Kyoko spoke firmly. Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Junko Enoshima or Bashiki Madare, if you're dealing with him, he won't be able to lay a finger on Makoto. I don't fully trust you, but if you're really concerned for Makoto's life, I'm willing to work with you. Unlike Bashiki, who's probably abandoned him already. Right? I'm sorry. I don't really work well with others. Makuro looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. But, I'll do my best. The doors closed and Makuro was gone. I'm sorry for involving you in something so dangerous, Chihiro. As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Makuro gave her, Kyoko turned to Chihiro, who was still working on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Chihiro slowly looked back at Kyoko. Kyoko? About what Makuro said just now. Chihiro's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kyoko tried to calm her down. We can't determine if anything she told us was true or not. There's no need to be afraid. Chihiro shook her head and returned to looking at her laptop. I think she's telling the truth. What are you basing that on? Well, it looks like Monokuma is really being controlled from the outside. Part of Monokuma's system had been connected to Chihiro's laptop, and she was analyzing the data within its control system. And it was then that the ultimate programmer noticed something unusual about it. This control program. I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational. Chihiro started trembling so much that she was unable to continue speaking. We can't confirm that, said Kyoko, proposing another possibility to avoid jumping to conclusions. It's possible that a similar program is being developed in secret. But Chihiro adamantly shook her head and said, No, that's not it. It just looks really familiar to me. Kyoko looked over Chihiro's trembling shoulder to peer at the screen, and that's when she noticed. This program. Chihiro, did you create this? All the ultimate programmer could do was nod weakly. Oh! So she created it within that gap. Interesting. It's crazy. First floor main hall. Makuro continued moving forward and was fortunate enough to not encounter Sakura or Mondo. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to a hall as large as the gym and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped out of the shadows to block her path. Within this hall that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manner of heavy weaponry, Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place here. His laughter rang throughout the room as he wiggled his body from side to side. Boo-hoo-hoo! What were you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival from Makoto's affections? Or did you help play matchmaker instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Makoto and Kyoko in this kind of situation together? If this were a suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing. But if this was a horror film, they'd just die anyway. The killer was alive all along. Splat goes the blood, plop goes the meat. I'm a huge fan of endings where the characters think they're gonna live, but they're really headed to a final destination. Wait, what the hell is a tenation? What does that even mean? Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Makuro remained unperturbed. She continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma, as if she was waiting for him to finish speaking. Poo-hoo-hoo! Well, anyway, I'm just so sad right now. A regulation-breaking delinquent is disrupting the harmony of this peaceful academy. I can't even keep one of my students from running wild. Time to say goodbye to your incompetent headmaster. I'm going to use Monokuma Evolution to become a big magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student. As soon as he said that, Monokuma extended his claws and waddled toward Makuro. So if I'm going to mold you, then I gotta kill you first. Right as he finished speaking, Monokuma suddenly charged at Makuro like a spiked volleyball. But Makuro was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping her distance from Monokuma just in case his claws could extend even longer. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Makuro twisted her body to its limits and just narrowly evaded the figure's attack. When she landed on the floor, she immediately saw. Poo-hoo-hoo! So what does the immortal killer want anyway? Are you going to tell the others the truth and escape with them? Even though you know what the outside world is like right now? Two Monokumas were speaking to Makuro in unison. Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on everyone's face when they discover the truth. It fills me with such heart-throbbing excitement. The two Monokumas continued to speak in stereo sound. You said you'd destroy my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you, no matter which route you take. And you only have yourself to blame for that. Don't tell me you thought that they'd be grateful to you. Even if you guys escape here, do you think they'll still forgive you when they get a whiff of that nasty air outside? Some of them might prefer to stay in the school, and some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. But then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they think of you. Monokuma made a little mistake. Despite facing down two Monokumas, Makuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling two Monokumas simultaneously was a piece of cake for Junko. Makuro drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and readied herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office, sharpened into a pointed weapon. With her weapon in hand, Makuro responded in a cold mechanical tone. That's fine. I'm already used to that. None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Makoto would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clear to her now, and she calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. Junko, open the gates. The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokumas momentarily speechless, but soon they replied. Huh? Why? So we can all leave together. Another straightforward answer. Both Monokumas faced each other and began gesturing as if they were whispering to one another. Makura knew their movements were intended to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Junko directly. I think they'll understand if I show them the outside world. And then they'll stop doubting Makoto. You always find new ways to disappoint me, Makura. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system? It's true that the air outside is polluted, but I don't think it'll kill us immediately. Besides, it's better than being trapped in the school and forced to kill each other. How can you be so sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space dust, he interviewed the others and they all agreed that they wanted to stay in the school. That was before their memories had even been erased. Do you really want to betray their wishes? Makura blinked and slowly stepped forward. I don't really care about their feelings. Huh? You're all I need, Junko. So don't worry, I'm always watching out for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair, and I'm going to make Makoto and the others happy. If you want to revel in your own despair that badly, then I'll trust the hope Makoto gave me and take my chances with them instead of you. Makura's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn and talk to each other again. Oh my, this doesn't look good at all, Monokuma A. This child doesn't realize her own hypocrisy. She's so disappointing that she's starting to reach critical mass, right, Monokuma B? The two Monokumas looked at Makura, who seemed ready to destroy them, and said, What do you think, Monokuma C? Makura was taken aback by their question, but her instinct suddenly kicked in and she immediately dodged away. At that moment, a third Monokuma's claws extended passed by where her head had been previously. This new Monokuma unit landed with several spins and faced Makura, who had clung to the remains of a surveillance camera still attached to the ceiling. I agree with you both, A and B. The three Monokumas lined themselves up. To the students locked inside the academy, this sight would have been akin to a nightmare. Right on! Poo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! The three units began speaking in perfect harmony as their 6 eyes looked up at Makura. Suddenly, they each jumped away in 3 separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack all converged on a single point, Makura, who was still clinging to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. But this situation wasn't even a nightmare to Makura. Compared to the time she fended off 3 assassins who had invaded her camp one night back when she was still a member of Fenrir, this was nothing. This thought crossed Makura's mind as she dangled from the ceiling with one hand and thrashed her limbs around like a tornado. Intercepted by this move, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a loud crash. Makura landed on the ground and chased after one of them, brandishing her metal bar. Suddenly, she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He had detonated the bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Makura down with him. But thanks to her own battlefield instincts, Makura managed to avoid the explosion. She looked toward the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attracted the attention of Sakura and the others. But she didn't hear any footsteps approaching. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke. Oh, you don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I'd disarmed the poison gas and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kyoko and others are all in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Makoto is with them too. I doubt Sakura will get too rough with him, but I'm sure Byakuya will torture Makoto once he wakes up. I can just imagine him rubbing salt or pouring soy sauce into his open wounds. Man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now. Bwahahaha! She listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices. Makura tilted her head slightly and asked, I'm pretty sure they're going to find out that you lied about that special police unit. Are you really okay with that? No worries. Once I've dealt with you, I don't care at all if they find out I was lying. Poo-hoo-hoo. You still don't get it. You're such a disappointment. Suddenly dawned on Makura. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care if the students found out he lied. but rather that the voices of the Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. Proo-hoo-hoo! Proo-hoo-hoo! As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokumas appeared. The one that exploded couldn't have revived, so a new one must have come to take its place. There's no way Makura only heard 3 Monokumas talking just now. As if to prove her hearing had been accurate, the Monokumas suddenly made their move. The 3 Monokumas bent over and began twirling their upper bodies. From behind them, new Monokumas emerged, like after-images brought to life. The second row Monokumas mimicked the earlier ones with only 1 frame of delay, revealing even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, Makura realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each. Pooh-hoo! Did you know this is called a circle dance? Monokuma's 30 voices spoke in perfect harmony as they divulged information that had nothing to do with the current situation. Makura already knew that multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Junko knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Makura had no way of knowing if these 30 Monokumas were part of a larger contingent. The flock of 2-toned teddy bears continued to twirl around. Makura felt like she was being bombarded with hypnotic images. But faced with his abnormal sight, the ultimate soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked earlier in the gym when Makoto was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of despair, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing throughout her body, speeding up the reaction time of her cells. As her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again. Don't worry, I'll make sure Makoto doesn't die. As long as everyone lives, I can reset their memories as many times as I want. Pooh-hoo-hoo, that's right. All your efforts, hopes, dreams, and determinations are going right in the garbage heap. The Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10, as if the mastermind controlling the Monokumas wanted to show off her ability to manipulate them. However, the ultimate soldier knew what the true purpose behind all this was. She strained her ears to their limit and noticed a certain sound hidden among the Monokumas' voices. Makura's face remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The moment she moved to the side, a roaring sound shook the entrance hall. The ceiling-mounted turrets in front of the gate started raining bullets down on Makura. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy while she tried to blow her away. As if further trapping her, the Monokumas charged at Makura through the storm of bullets. Makura guessed that the mastermind programmed their movements in advance so they wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran for the gates, evading waves of bullets and claws every step of the way. Programming 30 Monokumas in 2 turrets while also predicting Makura's escape route? This would be considered impossible for anyone but Makura. This would be considered impossible for anyone, but Makura knew it was possible for Junko. As ultimate despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities that surpassed the capabilities of any normal human. Her display of power was only for filling Makura with despair. Despair. The scene playing out in front of Makura was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokumas laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It was a despair to the point of absurdity, and it was all from Makura. But in the presence of such despair, Makura felt a strange serenity. For me. Junko's doing all this for me. Junko, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Makura really was a disappointment. She clenched her fists. Junko, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, and Makura fell completely silent. As a member of Ultimate Despair, Makura's heart was filled with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turret seemed to stop for a moment. But that was only an illusion to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and avoid being picked up by the sensors spread throughout the school, with Makura at the center. I'll make sure I do this right. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned off her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder. As this coldness spread into her heart, it began to beat in a mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Makura's body and mind melded together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature now dominated the battlefield. Despair bullets and Monokumas filled the air. Makura predicted their movements and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokumas jumped at her, but she avoided his attack, kicked his body, and launched herself in midair. Bullets pierced through the space Makuro was previously occupying, striking the falling Monokuma right through its internal bomb. The impact of the bullet caused it to explode, sending fiery Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Makuro balanced herself in midair as she kicked away three Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves into the paths of incoming bullets, exploding one after the other. Some of them exploded near the main entrance, but the blast didn't even leave a scratch. With full control over the entrance hall, Makuro evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokumas weren't enough to destroy the door. But she refused to stop. Makuro needed to get information on what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Junko. Makuro wanted to fill Junko with despair by instilling hope into the future of Makoto and the other students. That was Makuro's ultimate goal. Get information. In contrast to her determination, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Makuro was not currently speaking to Junko. This situation, this battle of death and destruction, was a conversation of sorts for Makuro. All she knew how to do was fight. She thought she wasn't interested in anything else. She thought she didn't need anything else. All Makuro needed to be was a sword to fulfill her sister's desire for despair. That purpose alone was the crux of her existence, and she lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Makuro. A battle to the death revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were in the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, uprooting others who also speak the language of violence. This was true even against her sister. When Junko would berate her sister, Makuro couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologize profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Junko was using a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair who tore the world apart was speaking to her sister with the language of power. Makuro's heart filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on her conversation with Junko, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Makuro continued her heated conversation. Endless rounds of despair fired from the school's turrets, but Makuro's words intercepted every last violent shot that threatened to shatter her body and mind in half. She quickly realized that the Monokumas hadn't decreased in number at all, no matter how many she kept destroying. Not only that, she noticed that more Monokumas had been joining the fray until there were nearly 50 of them for Makuro to fight. But Makuro's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko, and she learned hope from her acts of violence. For Makuro, who had no interest in this world, the small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of her perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely dance. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair which accompanies the music of hope. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. Computer rooms, innermost area, Monokuma rooms. Alright, we're on 514. How much time had passed? The Phalanx cameras at the gates were capturing footage of countless Monokumas falling at the hands of a child who fought like a raging demon. The Monokumas bolstered their numbers, and now 100 of them were trying to sink their claws into Makuro. Most of them were running on autopilot, reacting to her movements based on prior information they had received in advance. But despite standing before hundreds of mechanical adversaries, Makuro's face showed no fear. She hadn't sustained a single injury, giving her a presence that was nearly divine to behold. Though Sakura Ogami was powerful enough to injure her arm, Makuro, in her current state, could potentially fight Sakura to a draw now, without relying on firearms. She took complete control of the battlefield, taking in her surroundings as if they were part of herself. She dodged attacks from the rear as though she had eyes in the back of her head, and stabbed through Monokuma's weak points with her metal bar. No matter where the attacks came from, Makuro deflected them, all as if her skin were covered in eyes. Describing her as ultimate no longer did her justice. Makuro had transcended the boundaries of humanity and became a pure killing machine. Despite that, even though she understood the ludicrous power her sister possessed, Junko was not afraid. She felt not one iota of fear. After all Junko can feel is despair. She even started to admire her sister's attempt to fill her with despair, but that sentiment quickly filled Junko with an orgiastic ecstasy of despair. Junko knew. She knew that Makuro was neither hope nor despair. She was just a phenomenon. A disappointing girl who no longer understood herself, who only knew how to be violent because it was all she could believe in anymore. Makuro had become an avatar of destruction beyond that of any military force. She couldn't even be considered a soldier anymore. She was a natural disaster, like a typhoon or a tornado. Or perhaps, like gravity, she was now a fundamental force of the universe that only existed to bring despair to Junko. The mastermind enjoyed watching her sister go all out. If Makuro destroyed everything and ruined her life, Junko would still be comforted by the despair. She could just go right ahead and overpower her. Junko considered this for a few seconds until a familiar, hopeless habit reared its head. Her habit of getting so bored that it made her sick. The girl who had been grinning as she watched the screen now bore a look of calm stoicism, and she reached for the microphone connected to Monokuma's speakers. Makuro was no longer human anymore, but Junko knew how to bring her back. It was a simple feeling, really, and with that hopeless feeling for Makuro in mind, the mastermind said just one word. Makuro. Ooh. In front of the main entrance. Makuro. That voice! It was calling her name. Instead of using Monokuma's voice filter, Junko's natural voice was coming out of a Monokuma's unit. That's all it took. With one word, Makuro Ikusaba stopped being a force of nature and became a person again. Monokuma would not miss this opportunity. As if moving to the beat of why can't I read anymore? As if moving to the beat of Makuro's shaking heart, a torrent of claws leapt to attack her. But Makuro trusted her instincts and twisted her entire body to fend off the attacks, leaving her with only a few scrapes here and there. But the despair wasn't over yet. The ultimate despair didn't waste any time making her next move. Makuro, watch out! Huh? As soon as Makuro heard that voice, her mind went completely blank. There was no mistaking it. That was Makoto's scream. The scream that saved her from the spears of Gunnar and changed her destiny. No, that's wrong. It took her a tenth of a second to realize that voice was just a sound clip that Junko had replayed, but it was more than enough time to drag Makuro, who had regained her humanity, into despair. Right when she recovered from her moment of shock, Monokuma appeared behind her and roundhouse kicked her in the temple. She twisted her head to roll with the blow, but at that moment a different Monokuma attacked her from the opposite side with a headbutt. And as soon as Makuro dodged that attack, 3 Monokumas launched simultaneous dropkicks and knocked her to the ground. Ugh! The fact that they weren't using their claws meant they weren't trying to kill Makuro right away. Before she could stand up again, dozens of Monokuma waiting for her on the floor climbed on top of Makuro and pinned her limbs. One of the Monokumas waddled over to Makuro as she lay face down on the floor and laughed. Boo-hoo-hoo! A pretty girl getting pinned by all these me's. I wonder if I should feel more excited about this. Don't make that face. If I wanted to kill you, I'd just pump you full of bullets right now. But I don't think that the audience watching this on TV would like that ending very much. I need to make sure I do it in the right way this time. What are you planning to do to me? Makuro asked in her emotionless voice. Monokuma guffawed and answered. Nothing. I'm just going to stick to the original plan and make you play the killing game at this school. I'll erase everyone's memories again, and I'll just make them redo the introduction and the entrance ceremony again. Typical Monokuma fashion, he leaned his face toward Makuro. But it'd be boring if we had to redo everything. Maybe this time I'll have you participate as Makuro Ikusaba. I'll take away even more of your memories like I did to that irritating detective girl. You'll just be a poor little girl with no memory at all. As Monokuma talked and wiggled his body from side to side, the other Monokumas danced and twirled around. Amid this fantastical scene, Monokuma continued to describe his hopeless plan in a nonchalant manner. At first, you'll be the girl with amnesia, and everyone will feel so sorry for you. But as they unravel the mystery of this academy, they'll find out who you really are. It's exciting to think of how they'll treat you when it happens. Knowing you, you'll probably kill someone purely on instinct. Maybe I should rethink my rules about self-defense. Poo-hoo-hoo. You can't. Her memories would be erased. There was nothing she could do about her classmates hating her. But losing even her childhood memories would mean her connection to Junko would be severed as well. Even if Makuro had no interest in the world, that was unbearable even for her. I've heard of New Game Plus before, but this is the first time I'll get to see a New Game Minus. Should I tie you up for fun? Or maybe we should make this game even more masochistic. Forget hard mode, very hard mode, and inferno mode. Want to just skip ahead to impossible mode? Maybe I'll erase your memories after I drag you on a motorcycle, pummel you with 1,000 baseballs, burn you at the stake, and crush you with an excavator. Makuro knew what Monokuma was talking about. He was describing the tools they had prepared for the various executions they had planned for the students. After everyone reintroduces themselves, they'll walk around the school grounds and eventually find a flat-chested girl with amnesia, covered in bandages with Fenrir's tattoo on her right hand. I bet a certain fanbase might get off on that. If this were that game, that would increase sales by 500%. Though Monokuma sounded like he was joking, everything he said was deadly serious. As evidence, Makura heard a rumbling sound off in the distance. Now then, your sweet ride is on its way. Based on the engine's noise, Makura surmised that it was a large motorcycle that was supposed to be used for one of the executions. I took the time to bring this all the way from the punishment room, so you better be grateful. The sound of the roaring engine grew louder and louder, like the approaching footsteps of death. Makura wondered how Monokuma would drive it with such tiny arms and legs. Then she remembered she was dealing with an ultimate despair. Junko would make the impossible possible just to bring about despair. A despair that went hand in hand with Makuro's fate. Did I fail? I couldn't fill Junko with despair. I couldn't save Makoto and the others. Questions raced through Makuro's mind, but she wasn't able to answer them. There was no way she could have answered them so easily. After all, she was still alive. The sound of the motorcycle grew closer and closer, as if it was threatening to break Makuro's spirit. Suddenly, Monokuma stopped moving. The other Monokumas continued doing their automatic movements. As this strange event unfolded, Makuro noticed something. The motorcycle had suddenly gone quiet. After a few seconds, the engine exploded to life and began to approach even faster than before. Only a few seconds later, what appeared in front of the main entrance was an enormous motorcycle that plowed through the group of Monokumas like a predator hunting its prey. The rider of this motorcycle was none other than Mondo Awada. Makura and Monokuma were both visibly shocked by this turn of events. Instead of addressing them, Mondo accelerated the motorcycle he stole from Monokuma directly toward Makuro. Just before his front tire touched Makuro, he popped a reverse wheelie and turned the entire motorcycle around. The back wheel swept over Makuro's back, knocking away all the Monokumas that were pinning her. Hey, can you stand? Mondo asked and begrudgingly offered his hand to Makuro. Confused, Makuro took his hand and stood up. What are you doing, Mondo? I was so close. What are you doing, Mondo? I was so close, one of the Monokumas protested. Not in his normal voice, but as the hacker, Bashiki Madari. Oh yeah, you're Bashiki or whatever, right? That's right. Why are you helping a terrorist? I ain't bragging about this or anything, but I have no idea if you or this girl is lying. The veins in his temples began to bulge and his cheeks flushed with anger as Mondo said, But still, I ain't the type to just stand around while some idiot gangs up on a girl. What are you saying? Get a hold of yourself. You must be experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. You deluded yourself into thinking you're friends with the criminal who's taken you hostage. Monokuma tried to explain to Mondo, but he ignored him, took Makuro's hand and pulled her onto the back of the motorcycle. Oh, shut the fuck up. I don't know nothing about Stockholms or syndromes, but don't go acting like you can boss me around. As Mondo shouted, he revved the motorcycle as if he was using it as a punctuation of his words. The ceiling-mounted turrets began moving, but the two disappeared before the turrets could take aim at the motorcycle. As Mondo shouted, he revved the motorcycle as if he was... Oh, I already read that. I'm sorry, the background cut. As they zoomed through the hallway, countless Monokumas chased after them, waving their claws wildly through the air. "Why?" asked Makuro. "Huh?" shouted Mondo. His voice was even louder than the sound of the engine. "Don't get the wrong idea. I don't trust you at all." He lowered his voice slightly, as if he were whispering to himself. But still, I don't know why, but I felt like I could trust what he said. "He?" inquired Makuro. But there was no time for questions. The unit leading the Monokumas chasing after the motorcycle had almost caught up to them. And then, like the enormous maw of some fearsome creature, they brandished their claws in perfect unison. At that moment, the motorcycle zoomed by a certain girl. A girl whose fighting ability surpassed that of any normal human. The strongest girl on Earth. With a fighting spirit that defied comprehension, the ultimate martial artist kicked off the floor. A sound even louder than the motorcycle's engine filled the room. When Makuro looked back, she saw Sakura landing on the floor, sending the pack of Monokumas flying several meters away. "Sakura!" She heard Makuro's mumble her name. Sakura didn't acknowledge it. Like a statue of a fearsome god king, she calmed her breathing as she stood before the pack of Monokumas, ready for battle. Your pursuit methods seem unbecoming for someone who claims to be the ultimate hacker. An overpowering aura seeped from her skin. Her skin shimmered as an intense heat began to fill the hallway. Unlike the power of Makuro's sheer violence, this was the power of martial arts. Makuro froze the air around her, and time along with it. But Sakura was generating enough heat to boil space itself as she stood before the Monokumas. With that heat stinging her back, Makuro looked ahead. Hifumi and Chihiro were cautiously peeking from behind the door leading to the dorms, while Hina and Taka kept watching from inside the building. After passing them by, Mondo slowed down the motorcycle as he reached the front of the cafeteria and turned into a complete stop. The other students looked warily at Makuro. But among these students, Makuro noticed two people who weren't regarding her with suspicion. "Yeah!" One was Kyoko, who seemed to be studying the situation. The other one was a skinny boy who was leaning against Kyoko's shoulder. "Makoto!" Makuro's lip began to tremble as she sat at the back of the motorcycle. Ignoring the pain coursing through his body, Makoto smiled at Makuro and repeated what he said to her earlier. I'm glad you're safe, Makuro." Unfortunately, Makuro was unable to realize her hope of filling her little sister with despair. Instead, she had successfully planted the seeds of hope into her fellow students. Oh, alright, where are we at now? Makoto had barely regained consciousness while Makuro was fighting the horde of Monokumas at the main entrance. When he woke up, he did something extremely simple. He talked about his memories. Most of the students who were still skeptical, even after listening to Makuro's recorded confession on Chihiro's laptop. Obviously, they were still not entirely convinced at first when Makoto woke up, but after Sakura asked him a certain question, the ambience completely changed. Then beyond these walls of the school, the world is completely destroyed? You're saying there's no one else alive? Makoto slowly sat up to answer Sakura's meek question. Don't worry, I'm sure Kenichiro is still safe. I'm sure he'll still keep his promise to you. Sakura gasped. Kenichiro was the only man she couldn't defeat, a man who had promised her a rematch, and she made her one other promise as well. How do you know that name? How do you know about that promise? Because you told me. No? Makoto slowly corrected himself. You told all of us. Sakura was silent after hearing those words, but she then faced the other students and spoke in a loud, clear voice. I'm going to trust Makoto. Sakura! Though Hina was shocked, Sakura continued to speak with determination. What Makoto just said is something I kept locked away inside my memories. In fact, I was planning to keep that a secret until the day I died. But if I share that secret, that means there was once a strong bond between Makoto and myself, and with my fellow students as well. Makoto continued to talk in a gentle tone. Though it couldn't have been good for his health, he continued to slowly talk about the memories that the other students no longer had. Why do you know about the story I'm planning to write? Are you a specialist Nen user who can predict the future? You already finished that story, Hifumi. You had me help you with inking. What? Wait a sec. How do you know I extorted money from that girl related to Kuzuru clan? Because you even tried to sell my organs to them. Ah! His wounds were excruciating. But even so, Makoto kept smiling and talking about their lives together, as if it was his duty to do so now that he had regained his memories. As the other students listened to him, they slowly began to realize something. The vivid accounts he was providing couldn't be explained as just passing knowledge. Clearly, some kind of bond between them all had been erased. Only Byakuya remained cynical. There's no way I would have grown closer to any of you. It's likely that you're all secretly working together. Though Byakuya was still hostile toward Makoto's recollection of their memories, for the time being, he determined that Makoto wasn't actually a terrorist. Makuro had bought enough time for Makoto to wake up and share his memories with the others. Even if she hadn't intended to do that, there was still a small sliver of hope that she grasped tightly. Ooh. Where are we at now? Holy shit. And now, as she looked at the boy who had smiled at her, Makuro didn't know what to say. She couldn't think of anything to say at all. The battle was over, and Makuro was now back to being a disappointing girl. She turned away from everyone's face and apologetically climbed off the back of the motorcycle. But Makoto saw her and slowly opened his mouth to say, "Thank you, Makuro. You saved my life." Makoto gave her words of sincere gratitude between his weak breaths. Makuro couldn't bring herself to look at him as she mumbled to herself. Why? Huh? If Kyoko told you, then you already know what I did, right? After regaining his memories and learning the truth, Makuro should have been nothing but a hated traitor to him. Why would he smile at someone like her? Makuro kept her head down. Makoto smiled as if he was unsure how to respond and said, "Well, I guess you're right. But you also saved my life many times during these past 2 years, and..." Makoto took a deep, quiet breath and smiled at Makuro again. "You're my friend. We all spend time with each other. It would be great if you could look for a different path, not despair. And if there's any way I can help you, I will. Do you really think I can walk another path at this point? I don't know what you can do, or even what I can do, but I think it's more important to look for that path instead of actually finding it." Was this intentional or coincidental? Just before he regained his memories, Makoto had said something similar to Makuro when she spoke to him in the nurse's office as Junko. Regardless of whether he lost his memories or gained them, those words revealed Makoto's true character. As Makuro confirmed that to herself, Makoto blurted out something that was almost too trusting. "It's not just you. Even Junko can." But he was immediately interrupted. Pew-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Monokuma's face appeared on every monitor in the academy, and his laughter seemed to be coming out of every speaker. "I could have kept pretending to be that ultimate hacker, but it's boring to impersonate someone who doesn't even exist. If this keeps up, I'll lose my identity and turn into Tanakuma." Kyoko looked up at a surveillance camera and addressed Monokuma directly. "You seem to give up pretty easily." "There isn't a bear anywhere that gives you up as easily as I do. Regardless, I'm pretty sure Chihiro has figured out the secret of my control program by now." "So, just as I thought, you included that program on purpose." "Stop, Kaden, no." Kyoko realized something when Makuro told her about Junko. There were 2 reasons such a hateful person would intentionally leave an obvious clue inside the Monokuma units. Either Junko wanted the students to learn the truth about the outside world and themselves and their own, and turn their hopes into despair, or she was looking forward to that clue resulting in her own plan being undone, which would allow her to feel despair towards herself. She was an angel of everlasting darkness, delighting in her own despair, using it to spread despair and destruction to those around her. Why would someone like that continue to play the role of Monokuma? "Actually, I set that program for Chihiro to discover if she happened to be one of the final 5 survivors. I feel so sad and empty that my preparation was a waste, but I'm going to think about it positively. The word retreat doesn't exist in Monokuma's dictionary." Nervousness began to grip the students as Monokuma continued talking in his relaxing, uplifting voice. Now then, it looks like everyone's here, including Toko, who's still tied up in her room. So let's start the heart-throbbing, exciting special graduation exam. Huh? The students broke out in noisy confusion, but Monokuma ignored them and kept talking. Don't think about it too hard. Relax, relax. Change a lax to a pert for all I care. I'll still be the most adorable bear here. Byakuya, visibly annoyed with Monokuma's nonsensical rambling, shouted, I already know it's you, Junko. Stop the stupid game and show yourself. Oh my, don't you know? If you want to lure the mastermind out of her heavenly hidey hole, you need to bring a worthy sacrifice. You're not worthy enough at all. Do you really think the mastermind would show herself for your pathetic hope and despair? Bah ha 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 ha. He roared maniacally, then began to explain the special graduation exam. If you pass my exam, everyone will graduate, but if you fail, you'll be held back for a whole year. I'll reset your memories, give you a fresh new lease on life, and you'll reintroduce yourselves at the start of the school year again. They say people's lives don't come with the reset buttons, but I'm not a people. Whether it's self resets or hard resets, I can do as I please. Yasuhiro seemed confused, but the other students knew what Monokuma meant by reset. He was going to force them to relive their school lives once again. As Yasuhiro struggled to understand, Taka pointed at a nearby monitor and shouted, Stop this already. No matter what you do to us, we'll never commit murder. These past few days should have already made that clear to you. What was that? Jumped Monokuma. Are you serious? Of course, no one here would ever take another human being's life for any reason. As Taka shouted, one of the students, a pale-faced girl standing apart from the others, looked away. It was Sayaka. As she trembled, a voice popped up from behind her. What do you think, Sayaka? She couldn't even turn around from sheer terror, but Sayaka knew. She knew Monokuma was standing right behind her. Do you really think none of you will become a killer? Monokuma leaned towards Sayaka, and asked her a question only she could hear. By the way, Sayaka, why did you go to Makoto's room when nothing strange had happened yet? Did you two have an inappropriate relationship? What would your fans think if they found out you made a move on a boy by sneaking into his room? Or were you there for some other reason? She could barely make a sound, much less scream, as her trembling worsened. Monokuma had nothing to gain by cornering Sayaka and toying with her emotions like this. He simply wanted to see the young singer fall into despair over her true character. And for that reason, Monokuma did not relent. Hey! What were you trying to do to your close friend you've known for the past 2 years? Her determination from last night blended with the memories Makoto had recounted and ate away at Sakaya's mind like a disease. As her mind began to rip itself apart, she fell to her knees. A clear ball, flying at just under 105 miles per hour, struck Monokuma in the mouth with enough force to sink into his face. The speaker in Monokuma's mouth was immediately destroyed as his body rolled into a wall and stopped moving. Sayaka came to her senses and looked where the ball came flying from. She saw Leon breathing heavily as he stared intensely at Monokuma. Yasuhiro grabbed him and yelled, "Oh, dude, why did you do that, Leon? That crystal ball is really valuable." Leon had stolen Yasuhiro's crystal ball and thrown it at Monokuma. "That Monokuma bastard was trying to take Sayaka hostage. What was I supposed to do?" "Dude, that crystal ball cost me $2 trillion. $2 trillion! They don't even print that much money anymore." "Ah, bullshit. Besides, if the world is all screwed up, what the hell are you gonna need money for anyway? But if it's safe out there, I'll just join the Major League or whatever and pay you back." Well, I could pay you back doing something else besides baseball." As those two argued, Sayaka fell to her knees. "Hey!" shouted Leon, running toward her. "Sayaka, are you okay?" She looked at him and stared blankly. "Leon." She had made up her mind, and she raised her head as she said, there's something I need to confess to you later." "What? Seriously?" Sayaka was staring at Leon so intensely that he briefly forgot about the current situation. "Not just you, but to Makoto and the others too." Sayaka had made up her mind to confess the sin that was weighing heavily on her heart, but Leon seemed not to hear the latter half of her remark. He ran back to the others, slapped Hifumi and Hashihiro on their backs and shouted, "Alright everyone, let's ace this exam or whatever and get out of here already. There's no way I'm going to let my happy memories of this place get taken away." The Monokuma inside the monitor responded. Fine, fine. Now that things are finally coming to a boil, let's start the graduation exam. Sakura, who had been outside the dormitory, suddenly appeared with some information. The Monokumas in the hallway are acting peculiar. The students all moved to the main building to see what Sakura was talking about. There they saw 50 Monokumas standing in 2 rows along the walls of the hallway, and one standing at the very end of the hall. There was something strange on top of this Monokuma's head, an enlarged version of the escape button that Makoto had obtained from the Mano Mano machine. As each student took in the sight, an announcement rang throughout the school. The me at the end of the hall has a button on top of his head that'll open the main entrance. You'll have 15 seconds to get that button, and if you do, I'll let you have it in place of a diploma. The students seemed surprised by the straightforward explanation. Only Celeste remained calm, and she asked Monokuma with a bored look on her face. Of course, it is not as simple as running up and taking it, is it? Oh, ho, 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 how mean. Do I look like the kind of headmaster that would interfere with a student's graduation? Forget the gunfire salutes. I'm going to send my graduates off with some fireworks. 100 fireworks to be exact, enough for 20 seconds of hardcore partying. The more perceptive students immediately realized what he was talking about. The bombs installed inside each Monokuma. They would explode one after the other, filling the hallway with fire as soon as time started. After 15 seconds, the me standing at the back of the hall is going to sacrifice himself to give you guys one final firework. By the way, this probably isn't important, but that button isn't very durable. Boo-hoo-hoo. This graduation exam was Monokuma's way of saying that he had no intention of letting anyone leave. It was clear from the explosion the students saw during the entrance exam that the halls of Hope's Peak Academy would be bathed in fire. Even if someone was lucky enough to survive the explosions, the burns on their body alone were enough to send them into a fatal shock. Their lungs might be completely incinerated by the scorching air before that. Even if they sacrificed one student to run through, the odds were low that they would even succeed. But there was no reason for every student to run in at once either, and a shadow of despair fell upon their faces. Nice, very nice. I almost want to take a picture, so I have these faces as a souvenir. As Monokuma laughed from behind the monitor, Sakura stepped forward. I'll do it. I have only seen the explosion once, but I believe I'm capable of withstanding its power. No, shouted Hina. You can't. Even you couldn't handle 100 of those explosions. Sakura shook her head. I'm the only one who even has a chance. Suddenly, Mondo remembered the motorcycle he parked inside the dormitory and said, Hold up, that motorcycle might be fast enough to go through these explosions. I'll do it. Don't be hasty, urged Sakura. Even if the motorcycle is unharmed by the explosions, that doesn't mean its rider will be. Sakura and the others continued their debate. One person stepped toward the hallway lined with Monokumas. I'll do it. Makura, screamed Makoto weakly. Makura, with her back facing Makoto, turned her head to the side slightly and gave him a small nod. She knew it would come to this. She knew why Monokuma would pose such an impossible exam. Junko's already looking forward to the next despair game. She's going to erase everyone's memories, including mine. She just wants to torment us and fill us with despair before that happens. But Makura knew her sister's personality all too well, and that's why she was confident. She knew that the escape button was real. Whenever Junko brought despair to others, she always made sure there was a possibility that despair would befall her instead. If the students won this gamble and made it through this horrible situation, they would finally escape to the outside world. That outcome would obviously fill Junko with immense despair. In the same way she left a clue in Monokuma's control program, Junko would not be satisfied unless she took pains to assure her own destruction. It was this quality that made Junko the ultimate despair. That's why Makura was determined to do it. She knew she was the only person who stood a chance of making that outcome possible, even if she had to risk her life. But right now, Makura wanted to live more than anything. She wanted to hold on to this world, a world she had no interest in previously. She didn't even know if this hesitation she felt was disappointing or not, but she wanted to live and continue searching for a new path. A path where she could abandon her submission to despair, where she could accept the sins of the past and continue to live. Makura, who was known as a war machine, found her heart beset by overwhelming fear and anxiety. Until now, it had never occurred to her that determination was necessary to live. As if she was brushing the fear aside, she quietly said, thank you, Makoto. Unfortunately, the words she said to the boy who showed her new possibilities never reached his ears. Sakura, however, heard her and frowned as she said, if you're planning to sacrifice yourself as an act of penance, I'll stop you with all my power. Though her words were firm, there was unmistakable affection hiding in them. Both girls had dedicated their lives to battle, and yet Makura felt a twinge of jealousy toward Sakura for possessing something she lacked. Makura leaned towards Sakura and whispered in her ear, What? Are you serious? As Sakura's frown intensified, Monokuma's voice blared throughout the halls. Alright, I'm gonna start the exam now. Ready, set, go! There was no time for questions or objections. The frontmost Monokuma exploded, sending a roaring wave of heat through the hall. But Makura didn't look away. She began moving, powered by resolute determination. Ooh. Monokuma room. As soon as the graduation exam started, the mastermind focused her control entirely on Monokuma holding the escape button, and completely synchronized her field of vision with it. She knew what was going to happen next. She could predict what her sister, Makura, would do in this exact situation, where she would choose to focus her superhuman skill with weaponry. And so, through Monokuma's eyes, she watched the scene unfold exactly as she had predicted. A pointed metal bar burst through the explosions, headed straight for the weak point of the Monokuma holding the escape button. Specifically, it was aiming for the point where the bomb's detonation system and Monokuma's power source overlapped. It flew straight and true as if it had been fired by a master archer. In order to bring despair to Monokuma, and by extension Junko as well, the super soldier known as Makura Ikusaba threw the pipe like a spear so it could attack the same weak point she had pierced in the nurse's office. As explosions filled the hallway until only 5 remained visible, the spear's speed and precision as it soared to its target defied all human logic. But the mastermind knew. She knew Makura had used her power to fill the world with despair. Power was all that disappointing girl had, but that power was useless against Monokuma. The mastermind had predicted that Makura would put all her efforts into that throw, and Monokuma caught the metal bar perfectly between his hands. The force of the throw knocked Monokuma back several yards, but the pointed end of the bar never pierced through his chest. Well, that was disappointing. The mastermind turned to look at a different monitor. She wanted to see the look on Makura's face when she realized that she failed to strike Monokuma. The despair of seeing the final Monokuma explode right before her eyes, completely obliterating the escape button. She wanted to sear this memory of her disappointing sister's final moments as her newfound hope sank into a dark pit of despair. On instinct, she turned her attention to the surveillance camera that hadn't been destroyed, but instead of seeing Makura and the others, she only saw Sakura, who looked as though she had finished launching an attack. She only thought it was strange for 1 second, but then the hopelessly powerful mastermind completely understood the situation and shifted her point of view to Monokuma. But because of that single second, Junko would feel just a pang of despair. 3 seconds left. Amid the smoke, flames, and heat encircling the hallway, it burst through with the speed of a cannon shell. It glared at Monokuma with hot, boiling eyes that betrayed the icy expression on its face. And then, sharply, swiftly, strongly, it transformed into a living weapon that cuts through everything, revealing its true form in that hall of despair. 2 seconds left. Monokuma, who was still holding the metal bar in his hands, tried to move, but at that exact moment the living weapon carved a path through the flames and appeared before him. Its body, which had never been wounded on any battlefield, was sustaining all manner of burns and injuries. But even so, it did not falter. The fire in its eyes never flickered once. 1 second left. The living weapon, Makura, slammed her knee into the back of the metal bar Monokuma was holding. The sharp tip of that metal bar pierced through Monokuma like a rail spike, shredding the detonator and his power source into pieces. Time's up. The 100 explosions ceased and smoke blanketed the hallway. Makura had dived into Monokuma, and the pristine escape button now rested in her hand. She and the other students of Hope's Peak Academy had passed the graduation exam. It was only a small amount of despair. Monokuma had tasted it in only 3 seconds. Nice. First floor hallway. Junko. Makura looked down at Monokuma. Could no longer move or self-destruct. When she spoke to him, a static-filled voice emanated from his mouth. It seemed his communication function still worked. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I never expected you to do that. He still sounded like Monokuma. It seems his voice modulator was unharmed as well. I must have overestimated you. I never thought you'd need anybody's help on the battlefield. When I give the signal, please launch me forward with roundhouse kick. Makura whispered these words to Sakura just before the explosion started. After Makura threw the metal bar, she jumped into the air at the exact moment Sakura unleashed a roundhouse kick. Right when Sakura's foot made contact with her own, Makura used the force generated by her kick to propel herself at Monokuma. Using the ultimate martial artist superhuman attack like a springboard, she shot herself through the air like an artillery shell. Enduring intense heat, shrapnel, and blood-draining G-force, she stayed conscious as she charged through the hallway engulfed with explosions and despair. Makura trusted Junko. She trusted Junko to predict that she'd throw a metal bar and catch it accordingly. Then she tried to look at her face as the despair sets in. The Junko and Enoshima she knew would definitely do that, although Makura hadn't predicted that her sister would try to kill her with the spears of Gunnar. She had a better understanding of her actions now. As Makura stared Monokuma in his face, all he could do was laugh scornfully. You put your life in someone else's hands for a deadly battle? I don't know how I feel about that. You'll always be a half-assed disappointment. I guess this time I'll just say I lost because I didn't see this much disappointment coming. The end, the end. Nukumaru shook her head at Monokuma. No, you're wrong, Junko. Huh? If you want to talk about winning or losing, I think we lost before we even started. Makura's eyes shifted from side to side as if she was unsure of something. She fidgeted in place as she continued to talk. No matter how much despair they felt, you didn't think they'd kill each other the way they were before. That's why you erased their memories. They aren't like the others you forced in the past. You knew these students would never do it. That's what you believed, isn't it? What are you talking about? So, it's okay, Junko. I'll bring back everyone's memories someday, and I'll show you everyone's happiness and their bonds. I'll show all that to you, and fill you with even more despair. Makuru nodded after she said that, as if to cheer her sister up. After several seconds of silence, Monokuma responded, You finally beat me this one time, and that lame speech is the best you can do? You're such a disappointment. You never fill me with despair, just constant disappointment. After pouting like a sore loser, Monokuma continued to speak in his usual tone. But you guys will be back. And when that time comes, I'll invite you guys to a wonderful place. I found out about this fun island while I was running things here. Poo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Monokuma's laughter filled the room before the static finally cut out and his remains fell silent. He wouldn't be talking again anytime soon. The mastermind was already preparing a new despair to bring to the world and to the students of Hope's Peak Academy, Junko included. In the end, the mastermind stayed in her Monokuma persona until the very end, and Junko Enoshima never showed her face again. It was as if she resented the despair Makura had given her. That thought almost filled Makura with despair. But when she heard her classmates calling for her, she sealed that despair into the depths of her heart. From now on, she would seal away all her despair. And one day, when she can give Junko the perfect despair, she'll unleash all the despair she stored and plunge with her sister into the dark abyss. I won't leave my little sister alone. In the end, that was the first hope that the disappointing older sister had felt since she was a child. Ooh. Several hours later, main entrance. Makura, are you really going to go out wearing that wig? After receiving a blood transfusion of the correct blood type, Makoto was beginning to show signs of recovering. Makura, holding her wig to disguise herself as Junko Enoshima, nodded. If I live as Junko, I might be able to understand her better. Despite that, Makura's voice still sounded like her own, as if she hadn't fully decided. And I made up my mind. While I'm out there, I've decided I'll accept everyone's hatred towards me, and toward Junko. I can't die until I've destroyed all the despair that Junko has spread. The damage that ultimate despair inflicted upon the world could not be measured in terms of money, culture, or even human life. Television broadcast had already begun informing people that Junko Enoshima and Makuro Ikusaba were the heart of ultimate despair. Among the survivors in the outside world, there are still people who hadn't been tainted by despair yet. regardless of the fact that she released Makoto and the others. To these survivors, she was nothing more than the reason the world ended. And to the terrorists wearing Monokuma masks who continued to ravage the world, Makura was nothing but a traitor. She was now in the hopeless situation of being enemies with most of humanity. But Makura wasn't making a big deal of it. I'm going to try, not to kill anyone who comes after me for revenge. Wouldn't it be safer to just turn yourself in? Wondered Yasuhiro. Well, you might just get executed instead. But you could live to be an old lady if your trial keeps getting pushed back. Makura slowly shook her head at Yasuhiro. Laws, justice, these things no longer exist. Is it really that bad out there? Maybe we should just stay in here. Byakuya glared at Yasuhiro with contempt. Ignorant idiots should just shut up. Your fate won't change whether you stay in here or not. Though he was shocked to learn that Togami Corporation had been destroyed, Byakuya continued to remain firm and proud, even toward Mukuru. You are a rare asset, continued Byakuya, so I will let you live for now. Depending on your actions, I may consider forgiving your crimes after I've built a new world. Only a Togami would boast that they're capable of forgiving the crime of ending the world. I don't need to do that. I don't plan on just surviving. Turning away from Byakuya, Makura looked at the other students. Everyone was reacting in their own way. Kyoko had a look of quiet preparation. Toko, having just changed back from Genocide Jack, was panicked and confused. Makura looked back on the 2 years she spent with them, then turned to Makoto, who shared the same memories as her, and gave him the escape button. Makoto, you press it. Huh? Me? I think it's better if you press it instead of me. She watched Makoto accept the button with some hesitation. Makura thought about what Monokuma had said. You guys will be back. Makura knew that Monokuma was telling the truth. After all, the file the students needed to fully restore their lost memories remained hidden in the academy. Research notes of Yasuke Matsuda, the ultimate neurologist. His research is the key to restoring everyone's memories. Even if the students no longer have their memories, they may be able to repair the bonds they had built among themselves over the past 2 years. But as long as their memories remain unrestored, the mastermind could still repeat her deadly plan. Although the island mentioned earlier sounded strange, the students could not turn their backs on the despair facing them. Then let's go. Makoto remembered everything that was happening in the outside world. The boy who had chosen to remain inside the academy 2 years ago was now chosen to leave. How much did he struggle to come to that decision? But he was determined to face that despair awaiting him outside, and hid his internal conflict from the others. By protecting Makoto's hope, Makura would bring despair to her beloved sister. But she no longer knew if the end result of her goal would lead to hope or despair. She pulled the wig over her head and hid her face with her hands. Was she smiling because hope was waiting for her? Or was she crying because her path would lead to despair? When she lowered her hands, her face was devoid of all emotion. Makura no longer knew what expression she would wear on her face. At the same time, Makoto pressed the escape button. A siren began to wail as the turrets retracted into the ceiling. From beyond the heavy door, a bright light appeared. An infinite number of ifs, and all the possibilities contained therein, encased the world. Accepting everything, hope, despair, and even the feelings of that disappointing girl, Makuro Ikosabe. Damn, that is a bright light. Ooh. Would you like to save? Sure. I got my platinum trophy, guys. Alright, so that's it. All we have to do is come here and buy this coin. Or by the ending. And now it's complete. We got all the movies, all the events. Concept art for Hajime, Nagito, Byakuya, Gundam, the 4 Dark Devas, Kazuichi. Oh, that's what his hair is supposed to look like without his hat? That's interesting. Teru Teru. Nekamaru. Mekamaru. Fuyuhiko. Ah, that's when he got the eye patch. Gotcha. Akane. Chiaki. What is that for? That's cool. Sonya. Hiyoko. Mahiro. Mikan. Ibuki. Peko. Good old Sparkling Justice. Oh, those are the patient's clothes. Monami. Usami. Boss Beast Horse. That's cool. Boss Beast Snake. Boss Beast Tiger. Boss Beast Bird. And Boss Beast Human. Those are cool looking Mono Beasts. Then Mono Beast 1. Mono Beast 2. Mono Beast 3. Mono Beast 4. Mono Beast 5, aka Diglett. Mono Beast 6. I don't know what the hell those things were. Mono Beast 7. I like those guys. Those guys are easy to kill. I never seen this one. Mono Beast 8. Fuck you. Mono Beast 9. Because of this form. Mono Beast 10. And Mono Beast 11. Never seen them. Monokuma and Monomi's high comparison. Ooh, Cyberpunk Island. That looks cool. Shower room. Oh, from, yeah. There's the market. That looks cool. Chandler Beach. Music venue. The restaurant. Ancient ruins. Why the hell is there like a transformer there? Bathroom. What is that from? Kitchen, yeah. Storage room. Oh, is that the bathroom for the one room? It must be. Yep, the ranch. Oh, why'd they make Taru a piggy? That's cool though. Bye bye ouchies. Danganronpa, Goodbye Despair. That's pretty sweet. Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, screw the theaters. Those things were crap. Oh, that's mean. Oh yeah, because I forgot he was, yep. Helicopter. Did that happen? I really don't remember much about the Wizard of Monami. And that's all of the special, artwork. Yeah, so that is literally the game. Yeah, let's save. So, once again, thank you guys for supporting, watching, and being a part of this. I think it was amazing. It was a fun game. I did like this one though, because it kind of brought the old people back. And actually gave her sister more of a role, which I liked. But yeah, the game was amazing. Can't wait to move on to Ultimate Despair Girls next month. Before we move on to the next one, which is I think V3. I do like the Danganronpa series. It's a really good series, I think. I really enjoyed this game. It's crazy. Nice twists and turns. But yes, thank you guys for showing your support for this playlist. I hope you still continue. Obviously, you don't have to watch everything I put out, and for the remainder of this month, it's going to be Call of Duty and Battlefront. And if you're not into the first-person shooters, I completely understand, but know that in February, we will be going back to Danganronpa, and I haven't decided if I'm going to do Crash or Spyro or maybe a different game, maybe even Dragon Ball Z, because I've been kind of wanting to play a lot of Dragon Ball Z lately. So we'll decide what happens in February, but for sure, Despair Girls, and the rest of this month, like I said, it's Call of Duty and Battlefront. So thank you guys, have a great evening, and I will see you on the next stream. Thank you, bye.